Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
Oh, that was a good face, Derik. Oh, look at him, he's dancing. He's excited to be here.
Yeah, well,
It's Friday. You know? He's wearing his I don't know what type of shirt. It's like a Indigo Isle shirt. It's literally the Indigo shirt.
I was trying, last time we were here, we just talked about Indigo Isles. I figured, oh wait, we're talking about Pathfinder Remastered.
It's remastered.
Don't call it a new edition though.
Not a new edition. It's a remaster.
It's totally a new edition.
Depends on how you define a new edition.
Massive sweeping overhaul of rules changes that makes previous books difficult, if not impossibly incompatible with the current version.
I don't think that's a new edition. I think that's just more goodness for you to play with.
It's fine. It's just every phrase and word that referred to anything that was in the OGL now has a new term and a new word. Let me put it this way. Imagine if you came into Pathfinder 2nd Edition having never played from the original release. You picked up your first PF2 book with Core Remaster, and you learn all the terms, off guard, reactive strike, whatever, what have you. You go back and you pick up Agents of Edgewatch to run it for your group. And in there they say, if the party doesn't do this, they'll be flat-footed when they come in. And you go, oh, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. Yeah. I've never seen that term before.
I think they were saying that player core would include a list of equivalencies.
Yeah,
so you would have it in your player core.
You're right. So I just have to cross. So now I have to learn all of the terms.
Hey, look, is that any different than...
And learn all of the terms that they relate and connect to.
Let me ask you.
I don't care about that. I wanted them to do Pathfinder 3rd Edition. Hey, you want $150 for another 2 core rulebooks? I would give it to you tomorrow.
First of all, they're not doing Pathfinder 3rd Edition anytime soon.
I know. Well, now they're not.
Now they're definitely not.
Now they're definitely not. I was fingers crossed for a 3rd edition.
You're wrong.
2025.
That would have been impossible. Wrong. But I'll tell you, TAP in Magic the Gathering, every collectible card game has their version of TAP. You know that. It's like no one else does TAP. And that works out fine, right? You can do it. You can have more than one term mean the same thing.
Sure. I mean, listen, again, I don't care. I think off guard is a better term.
There you go.
I mean, I 100%. I mean, number one, flat-footed. Right, flat-footed makes sense with, like, you are surprised. Like if you're attacked by someone who has complete concealment from you or whatever, what have you. That makes sense. And to a sense, I mean, that's kind of what flat-footed meant in 3rd edition when the term was introduced. It meant you don't get your dexterity bonus to your armor class. But flat-footed also implies a certain level of like you're unable to react. And so then it's like, well, why doesn't this affect my reflex save? And it's like, it just felt a little strange. And then you get grappled or prone and you're flat-footed. How am I flat-footed? I'm on the ground. It doesn't even make sense. So off guard or,
it was just a legacy term.
Right. It was just a legacy term. But I'm saying the concept of it had been expanded to include so many different other facets. Now, to be fair, to be honest with you, my favorite usage of this term was 4th edition D&D, where it was just called Combat Advantage, because it just It was very generic and mechanical. It was flavorless and soulless, but it got the point across. But I like Off Guard a lot better than Flat Footed. But I've been using Flat Footed for 23 years, so it's going to take a while. You know?
You'll get there. You'll get there. You're a smart guy.
Let's see. I also, and again, you know, it's interesting because I like my games to be kind of, you know, I like my mechanics to be mechanics. Like, I'll be the first one to admit that, like, Attack of Opportunity is horribly boring, right? It just doesn't even sound like a cool thing. Like, I don't have a way to even describe it in the fiction of the game that we're playing. I mean, you know, obviously Attack of Opportunity is a real life concept in a sort of generic sense, but like Reactive Strike is so much more evocative and cool and flavorful. So like when you can get the point across and also have a cool name or game and mechanic, I'm all for that. So I like it.
Mm.
So yeah, we've started off with terminology.
Wow,
changes.
hit the ground running there.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Good. It's
People
good. He's
are
right into
interested
it.
in seeing that.
Let's see what else. Okay. All right.
Up, it's the Derik show. All right, we'll just sit here. I'm gonna go get a beverage.
I've got the PDF open. Okay. Most of these, like for example, going back to what I was saying before, I have gone on. Now, if Jessica was here, she and I would have to fight, and I love.
I know. I was almost thinking. I was like, if it was you and Jess, I literally would have to just leave.
I'm a big fan of Planescape, but I will be the first to admit I do not like the Great Wheel cosmology. I never really have. Even though I liked Planescape, I felt like the Great Wheel cosmology made a lot of sense, specifically in Planescape. I just don't think that the game the Great Wheel doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I much preferred 4th edition or Eberron's sort of take on cosmology. So not only did I not like that cosmology, but I also hated the names of it. I have never once in my entire life liked positive energy plane or negative energy plane. It sounds so lame. So them calling it the Void and Creation's Forge, that's awesome. Like, I'm all for it. And it helps them create their own world. It feels distinct and it feels like part of this world that they are building of Galarian. So
they already called it that.
Yeah.
Those were already subtitled, like the Outer Rifts, and like if you go to Planar Adventures in PF1, it'll be like the positive energy plane, and then underneath, like in italics, Creation's Forge or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Or then the Abyss said the Outer Rifts, and it had another name in there too. Yeah. So like these are not like coming out of nowhere. These are names that other names of that plane from the multiverse as well.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, you know, there are some name changes which feel like we're, you know, obviously they're just doing this to completely even break any semblance of tie with, you know, the existence of the OGL, right?
Which they have to. Like some degree of the changes were necessary. And when we say necessary, we're not lawyers. Nobody knows exactly when you could be sued because it's never actually come to court and it's an open question. But like, do you want to take the risk if you're Paizo and this is your entire business? Nope. You do not want to take the risk. It was guaranteed that they were going to need to change a certain amount.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, so I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction. And again, I mean, look, I mean, you know this, Mark, right? I mean, Pathfinder 1 was a game that was sort of, you know, very much tied to the legacy of D&D, and specifically 3rd edition D&D. Pathfinder 1 and D&D 3rd edition, very similar DNA. And you obviously were on the design team for Pathfinder 2nd edition. And there's this tension, right? Because you're like, we want to do things with our game design, but we also feel a certain amount of restrictedness because we are tied to this concept of the OGL.
Ability modifiers are a great example. You can tell. Like this is, and I was very pro ability modifiers, but most of the design team were very pro ability modifiers instead of scores. It wasn't like Mark was out there talking about ability modifiers and everyone else was like, no, do a score. No, like there was a lot of opinion across the entire design team that modifiers would be great. That's why it's in the beginner box.
Yeah.
Right? But there was overall thought that legacy was very important. That was like sort of permeated throughout the fan base and like the company as a whole. Yeah. And that's why for the beginner box, we were like, let's do modifiers. And then there are other people, the company was like, well, but we had this discussion already, right, about the game, and we said we did scores. And we were like, yeah, but in that discussion, the answer was that for legacy reasons, players who had played since the other editions would want to see the scores, or they might be like, wait, this isn't 18 isn't here, it's +4. I don't know what this is.
Right.
But we're not targeting those players with the beginner box, because the beginner box is specifically targeted at someone who's new to RPGs. So therefore we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, Pathfinder 2 should never have had ability scores. I mean, the moment you stop rolling dice, especially 3 6-sided dice, which is why 18 is even a concept in our games, is because that was the most you could roll on 3 6-sided dice. Once they stopped an ability boost only, you know, I mean, obviously there's this little quirk here with the partial boost, which we can talk about a little bit. But obviously, I would like to think, Mark, that if you went back to 2018 and you were redesigning Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you know, in a time machine, that if you knew that you didn't have to do ability scores and you didn't have to do ability modifiers, you wouldn't design the math of the game around this concept of a partial boost. You would probably come up with a more elegant solution.
We'd probably come up with some other solution, but the game would be drastically worse if there wasn't a way that you get diminishing returns as it goes higher.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying there's probably a more elegant way to do it.
There may be, but a more elegant way to do it. We would have had to spend a lot of time. Yeah. But we might have come up with something. Like, you know, for example, the ABC system and the way that gets the ability scores in, it might seem so obvious. If you look at it now, it's like, oh, that was obvious. That probably didn't take a lot of design. You just, each of the things that you do gives you some ability squares. But you have to understand that to get to that from where we started required an incredible amount of back and forth work by myself and Logan Bonner. We would have never come up with it if we didn't have both of us pushing each other on constraints, being like, no, this constraint means we can't do that idea because then it's just going to cause this issue. Or no, that one means that we can't do this. Okay, but how can we do that? Well, we needed to actually involve 4 discrete steps. You know, we got to that point at some points, like if there's 4 discrete steps where you can put in ability scores and in a pyramid of 1, 2, 3, 4, where one of them has 4, one of them has 3, one of them has 2, one of them has 1, then we eventually realized that would be a way that we could start seeing the kind of ability modifiers we were looking for without just being like, oh yeah, everybody, we gave them so many boosts and everyone takes multiple 18s and then dumps everything else or something like that. And from there, we were like, yeah, but that's kind of arbitrary. But wait, we can tell the story and it would make sense. And it would be easier to assign the abilities, because for new players, they're like, they don't know where to go, what to do with ability scores. But if your ancestry and background and class are guiding you towards them, it makes the process easier, makes it harder to mess up because some of those steps force you to take ability scores that are good for you.
Right.
Like eating your vegetables, I guess. Right. And so that was just something. And when I pitched that particular permutation, and then Logan like sat and he thought over it for a second, made sure all the constraints he was being the person who was mostly looking at would be satisfied by it. He's like, I think that works.
Yeah.
And that took a ton of work. And when you look at it now, it's like, oh yeah, that was easy. But it was not easy to design that. And so maybe there is something like that for ability modifiers that does not involve a partial boost. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. What they did is what I would do right now.
So what I would have done at the top of my head is give you 4 boosts at level 1, 4 boosts at level 5, level 10, level 15, and level 20. And let's call a spade a spade. The level 20 boosts don't matter. I mean, you know, it's going to be for a few sessions if your game even makes it that far. I would have basically just said, when you take an ability boost, increase your, let me get the terminology here right. Increase your attribute modifier by +1. Note, you cannot take an ability boost to +5 until you are level 10. So it would essentially give you an extra boost, but you couldn't put it in, you couldn't just stack it into your primary.
That doesn't have the same beneficial effects.
But you end up in a situation where
it's quite dissimilar.
But what you end up doing though is you would have essentially you get a free extra boost at level 5 and level 15 which you put into a lower level stat, which probably doesn't really matter that much, because like it doesn't make that big of a difference if, you know, I mean, yeah, sure, cool. My fighter ends up, he's like, I normally boost my con, my strength, my wisdom, and my dex. Fine, I'll boost my charisma 1 extra time. But by the end of the game, where somebody has a +6 or +7 charisma, and now my fighter, instead of ending the game with a +2 charisma, ends it with a +3 charisma modifier, I don't really think that shifts the math of the game that much.
No, you're more looking at having something like multiple 22s and a bunch of 20s, and you still have a +0 in the other ability scores. The problem is that it is very beneficial to force you to spend extra resources when you're above a certain point to continue past that point, because it means that if you are playing a character who would like to be more well-rounded, that you're not penalized and you're not forever behind. And if you do it that way, you are forever behind. Maybe you'll catch up because the level of leeway where you were not allowed to put it in lets you catch up, but you'll never catch up if you started a certain amount behind, basically. So you won't see it being like, oh yeah, I'll put that into my really low charisma at the end. Instead, you'll see, so like right now, your ending score, you'll have 22, 24 with an apex item, right? And then you can probably get to 20 in a second ability score. You can get to 20 again in a third ability score.
Right.
And then you can get to if you have the right ancestry, and then you can get to 18 in a fourth ability score, and you have like a booster 2 left over. With the way that you had it, you would be able to get 20 instead of 22, 20, 20, 18 and leftovers, you would wind up with 22, 22, 22. So your second and your third highest one, your second one would go up by 2, or your modifier would go up by 1, and your third one would go up by 2, or by modifier 2 and stat 4. Well, yeah, because of the fact that the limit, it didn't cost more to get it above after 18, so it takes a while to catch up, but it goes up to 22.
Right, it does take a while to catch up, but yes.
So they're not putting their +2 up to +3, they're getting another +6.
But at the end of the game, I don't know. If a character's 15th level, I don't care if they have, 2 or 3 stats that are really high. It doesn't matter. And you can only get one apex item.
I'm not saying that it's overpowered. I'm saying that it removes the beneficial way that diversifying to your 4th and 5th stat instead of absolutely maxing your 3rd stat is generally can be appealing if they have differing costs. Like using both my 4th and my 5th compared to getting that 20 in my 3rd stat. Obviously, your 1st stat you want to max out, like no matter what, right? It's your top stat. But I can see a very strong argument to put up your 4th and your 5th instead of your 3rd. But that is removed in favor of the total min-max being the only sort of stat array. That's the issue, not like how strong the characters are. You can balance around that, right? You can just you can change the game balance, and you can bounce around anything.
It's just like, okay, I mean, the other aspect, or the other side of it is just like and again, you might disagree, but I think most people who play Pathfinder 2nd Edition would feel like you're pretty much priced into boosting your primary attribute score every opportunity you can get. I argue that you really don't need to boost it actually for 15, because who cares if you get another +1 at level 20. But if you want to be the best, and most people do because they want to hit and not miss and do nothing on their turn, which is totally reasonable expectation. There's nothing wrong with that. You're already priced into putting all these points into this thing anyway. So I feel like you only really, if you think about it in a certain weird way, you only really get 3 boosts. And I don't know. I just feel like I wouldn't hate a world in which we could have multiple things that were higher level. For example, imagine if I'm a war priest and my key stat's wisdom, and I don't care about my wisdom. I want to have a max strength. There's no way I can do that in the game. There's just no way. So, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, because obviously you designed the damn system. I'm just saying, I think that there had to have been, if you could redesign it from scratch up. I mean, I agree, like you said, there's something about diminishing returns. There's value to that, but the whole checkbox for a partial boost thing is pretty kludgy.
I bet there is a good solution, The solution you propose is not that solution.
All right.
Because
Fair
it
enough.
just is the
I'm not paid by Paizo to fix their issues. So
yeah. It's the all plus sixes, and it just is like there's one min-maxed ability array that you will always take on every character with that solution. But
right, but I mean,
there probably is a good solution that neither of us are talking about right now because we did not spend the amount of time and design effort that Logan and I did in that other case 100%. To figure it out.
But I would just point out, like, how many people, start with an 18 and it goes to 22, and then they have an Apex item, so it's a 24, and then their secondary stat is a 16, which goes to an 18, which goes to a 19, and then it goes to a 20. Like, yes, you're talking about having multiple 22s, but right now it's like, oh, well, you have a 22 and 2 20s. Is that?
But the thing is, right now you have a 22, you have 1 20 pretty much for sure, but that third 20, you might not get a third 20. You might actually choose to go into your lower ability scores, whereas with the other system, you will definitely get 3 22s. There's literally, unless you actually just didn't care, like the third, fourth, and fifth score were like, they're exactly equal to me, and I just don't care.
The marginal gain of having a 4 go to a 5 is this, or a 5 go to a 6 is the same as having a 2 go to a 3. It's still plus 5% on them. But the question is
how much more the stat matters to you, right?
Right, otherwise, but at that point, we're talking about our third stat, and you guys did a pretty good job of removing most of the multiple attribute dependencies. So
right,
I mean, we're talking about
that's the point. That's why I think it's not that what you said is supporting what I'm saying, which is that in the current system, the fact that you can, by not taking the 20 in your third stat, you can get 2 increases in your fourth and your fifth stat. Means that there's actually a good, like you said, the fourth and fifth stat are still pretty valuable compared to the third stat. You probably might do that. But in the system where your third stat is more important than your fourth stat and your fifth stat, you definitely will get the 666 because your third stat was more important than your fourth, and you had to make a 1-for-1 trade-off.
I mean, Mark, You're underestimating. Are you saying that if people had that option, they wouldn't be able to resist? I think they would, Mark. I think there'd still be somebody out there who's taking in boosts because their fighter is a smart person. There are people
who will do things when they want to do things, and they are an exception that proves the rule, Derik.
Sure. Anyways, long story short, I've been playing with ability scores for my whole life, but I will be the first to admit that they matter less now than they ever have. Pathfinder 2nd Edition in particular, because again, you don't roll your stats, and your boosts are all essentially they used to be in whole increments, and now you get this half increment. So for the most part, it doesn't really matter. And what having a 17 strength means nothing. The only thing that matters from your strength score is the attribute modifier. So getting rid of that, again, maybe they could have done it for the beginning of the game, but anyways.
Someone said, was the possibility of making increases over +4 cause 2 of your boosts at 2 of the boosts simultaneously at the same time discussed? Yes, the problem with that is it doesn't let you diversify your ability scores enough because of the fact that essentially you would do that while also putting in Derik's limitation of do it at 10th and then at 20th. And so you wind up being a little bit, I mean, like, it's better. It's better than just putting in Derik's first solution. It's a good way to patch up Derik's solution, because at 5th, you kind of got ahead on one of your other ability scores. Yeah. And then at 10th, you fall behind. And I think this is a good example, Z-Bave, of how iterative design can find a solution that's better, because I think that one clears up some of the problems there. It does lend into some situations where you can still go higher than before in certain ways, and it might, if you also add that in with someone else in chat said you can put a limit to say that of how many 5s and 6s you can have, just so you don't get into a situation where at 20th you are rushed and you put all 4 of your boosts into getting 2 6s, which maybe is just weakening your other ability scores too much, but is also just like maybe not something you would want to to have on there, perhaps, let's say that you did, if you combine everybody's ideas from chat with a limit on when you get the 5s, how many you get, and only 1 plus 6, with it takes 2 of the 4 boosts, I think you've got something that could be workable. It's a little complicated.
Right. Paizo's like, we're just going to add a checkbox to the
it's a little complicated, but
so okay. So long story short, I mean, again, is it weird? Is it going to take a while for me to get used to? Absolutely, but I'll get used to it. All right. So we're almost through page 3. Alignment. Good riddance. I don't care about alignment, and it's boring, and no one plays it the right way anyways. Because even if people are like, well, it's role playing. No, in first edition D&D, Gary Gygax, you got experience points penalties if you didn't play your alignment. Your GM,
you were punished.
You were punished.
Absolutely.
Like your GM would actually literally, there's a chart in the back of the Dungeon Master's Guide that had like a graph, and in the one corner was chaotic evil and the other corner was lawful good, and the GM was supposed to track where your character was moving. Oh, you're starting to become more lawful neutral. Your character's lawful good. You know what? I've decided that you have shifted your alignment to lawful neutral. Go ahead and write that. And also, by the way, lose all the experience that you've gained this level.
Look, Gygax's philosophical views are super cringe, and those are not the worst of them. But
2 days ago, yesterday the city of Lake Geneva officially declared that to be Gary Gygax Day. So, any case, I like alignment in that sense, where it's like, yes, this is a game about the battles between law and chaos, good and evil, and these things have weight. These things have meaning. Alignment has been a personality guideline for a long time, and it really doesn't have any, teeth, and I don't think they need it. So I like that they got rid of it. What I don't like is that they added these edicts and anathemas. It's like, you're basically saying your character should have personalities. Okay, like we don't need, like, after saying like all drow aren't chaotic evil, but they do tend to have these edicts and anathemas. I know they don't have the drow anymore, but it's like, we want to make sure that not all dwarves are the same, right? We don't want to just racially stereotype dwarves and saying all dwarves are like this. That's why we're getting rid of alignment. But here's a bunch of edicts and anathemas that dwarves might usually have. Like, I don't know. I just don't see why we even need that. Just let people make whatever characters they want.
It's an optional thing. It's a
I know, but it doesn't do anything. What is the point of it? Like, anathema in my mind, in the Pathfinder 2 context, it's like, oh, if my druid does this thing, they will lose their druidic powers. If my cleric does this thing, I will lose my divine powers. If my champion does this thing, I will lose my champion abilities. Oh, what about if I violate my dwarven anathema? Nothing. I don't know. You feel ashamed? You have a bad night's sleep? I don't know. Like, it does nothing. And so I just don't understand why it's even in the book. I'm not saying that like your character shouldn't have personal codes and all those other things. I just don't get why they would formally define it in like the terminology of capital E edicts, capital A anathema, which are already things that are used for literal rules in the game. And these don't clearly apply the same way.
So I want to address a super chat question, and then I want to ask a different question actually about our stream topic. So super chat from Ashandra is wondering if they wanted to have a war priest with strength, they said, might you like house rule it to move a free boost from the free boost step into the key ability mod step to do that? I would say absolutely not. If you want to be able to give the war priest strength, let's presuppose that you did. They need to pay for it in some way. And moving the 4th boost that is your least favorite ability score that you've ever raised during creation to get the thing that you wanted the most is not that. I would say let them boost not their key ability score and boost strength instead, as a house rule. If you wanted them to be able to get up strength, like make the one they get during the class phase change from wisdom into strength, so that they have to go for a stat that like matters to their class instead of whatever their 4th most favorite one is moving out. If you're gonna do that house rule, I'm not saying that either of those are good or bad for every group, but for a group that's looking to do that, that's a better one because there's more of a trade-off that way. So my second question is sort of about so is the topic of this stream discussing what critics are saying about the new Pathfinder remaster and addressing those concerns, or, and by the way, I no judgment because I actually like what I've seen so far. Is it that Derik goes through the file that Jeff, Steven, and I went through yesterday in the same way, but with Derik's takes, and we go back and forth and talk about that, and the critic that we're talking about is Derik in this case.
Well,
because both of those are very viable to me, but I want to know which one we're doing.
I mean, I think the main criticism that is being talked about the most in terms of external to Derik is the cantrip spell damage. Am I correct, Steven?
Oh, am I here? You guys took over the stream, or Derik took it over to the point that
I think Mark has talked more.
Yeah, you've talked quite a bit, Derik. 23 minutes on alignment. I mean, on attributes alone. What was the question? Oh, what was the point? Oh, well, I actually had a whole bunch of things planned, and they all went out of my head.
Yeah, that's why I was asking this. I thought that you had a different plan.
I did. I had a whole bunch of plans, but Derik jumped in 2 feet and
I think I talked
his
more,
arms
but
and
you
head.
still took over the stream more, Derik, because you directed the topic, and
Fair.
I responded to you a lot.
Well, because he was going off, and well, I wanted to actually. I'll tell you my theory and what I've been reading, because a lot of people are talking about, at least what I've been reading about, and it does have to do with ignition. And I don't want to go through everything because we did that yesterday. And I am interested in hear what you think on certain things, Derik, but we don't need to go through the whole thing. Is that people are like, oh, it's a nerf. And it always drives me crazy because, like, in Magic and in video games, especially MMOs, you would always see nerf. And it drives me crazy because it's like, no one ever complains when things get better, and everyone complains when things get, quote, worse. And
Sure.
The point is, it's like, if you want a game extremely well,
Steven, you know that people are loss averse, right? So, like,
yeah, that's true. No, they are loss averse. You know,
it's psychology.
It's
right?
psychology. But the thing is that how bad is it that a cantrip is losing 1 or 2 or 3 points of damage? It's
not at all.
Right. It's a cantrip, buddy.
It's a cantrip. It doesn't, like, here's the thing that blows me away. Okay.
It's a cantrip.
I've run like 6, I think, Pathfinder 2 campaigns. Okay. And there's always been, you know, sorcerers and wizards and stuff in there. Outside of maybe the first couple levels of the game, none of my players with these casters were ever casting cantrips. You have so many slots per day, and you have focus spells, which, by the way, you're getting more of now more than ever. Tons more. Why the bleep would you ever be casting a cantrip anyways? Like,
I think they're focused a lot on first level, Derik.
Yeah,
and it
maybe.
is true
I mean,
that cantrips are comparatively very strong at first level due to a rounding up thing that I talked about in the previous stream.
And you're absolutely right. Like, Electric Arc is a fantastic cantrip, as written. You know, it's a fantastic cantrip at level 1, and you know, it doesn't even scale that horribly as the game goes on. I'm just saying, when you have only a handful of, you know, spell slots, and your Burning Hands does 2d6 in a cone, and your Electric Arc was doing d4 plus 4. You're like,
to 2 targets. Like, how often does the cone even have more than 2 targets?
The cone is probably hitting 2 targets. Honestly, I might be able to have an easier time hitting 2 targets with the Electric Arc. And what's the average damage of that? 0.5 less?
It's very similar.
It's very similar.
The Electric Arc, as I mentioned in yesterday's stream, it got rounded up because there are limitations on what a game designer can do if it's not a video game. We didn't want to have scaling at heightened +2, which actually would have given us more power to make minute changes on the damage profile. And once it was going to be heightened +1 and be a random number, and we don't have D3s, the lowest it could be was 1d4.
Now, I will say that
Electric Arc scale rounded up, days rounded down, thus making days widely thought of as one of the weakest, and Electric Arc as one of the strongest, because it rounded up from what we intended it to have based on the playtest, when it used to go up at about the same time as striking runes. So the thing about this is, Derik, that I agree with you, and not only that, I would go even one step further. I wonder how many of the people who are worried about ignition have ever cast specifically the spell Produce Flame.
Correct.
Because of the fact that
Correct.
most of the people who are very worried about Ignition, I think, are also the same people who said that you should never cast Produce Flame.
Correct.
But
you are 100% correct.
I don't think they're wrong to. I don't think that the response is wrong. I don't think that means that they're being unreasonable either, because their fear is that Ignition being lower at range and higher at melee, 0.5 at first level and +3 higher at melee at 20th level, which is not a lot. Their fear is that indicates that Paizo wanted to nerf cantrips. Like Steven was saying, that they were like, Paizo's goal is to weaken cantrips no matter the cost. But that's not what Paizo's goal is, and it's pretty clear by looking at the other cantrips, including a range of elements, that that's not what their goal is. Their goal is that they want those ability modifiers out of there. They don't like having them in there. They've taken them out of everything.
Right. Now,
and the fact that Ignition's damage is 1.5 points lower at range at first level, that's not because the designers are like, people sometimes both over and underestimate everybody on design, right? It's not because the designers are like, we really want the damage to be under by 1.5. How can we do that? Well, we could do this thing. It's that they want the ability modifier gone.
Yeah. And
at that point, their only choices are that the profile can be minus 1.5 damage plus 0.5 for range or melee, or it can be +1 +4, where the damage was 6. So +4 nearly doubles it, makes it as high as hydraulic push, higher than thunder strength.
Right.
So because the only choices were 2d4 2d6 or 3d4 3d6 at the point where they were designing it. So they seem, as far as we can tell, we don't work at Paizo, we don't know for sure, but they seem to have a goal of removing the ability modifiers as the end goal and then keeping the math consistent so that you can use things from before and after the remaster as consistent as they could. And they couldn't keep it exactly consistent because they couldn't.
So, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And there's a couple of things that I want to address here in specific factors. So one is, and I just want to say this because it's in chat, Lorixish says, my concern is very specifically the terrible feeling now possible by rolling 4 on your cantrip crit, right? The idea being that you rolled a 1-1 and thus on a crit, you did 4 damage. But how come no one ever bitched that Burning Hands might roll 1-1 and do 2 damage, which was one of your slots, right? That was
I think people did complain about that, to be fair, but not nearly as much as now.
Yeah, that's the way it's always been, and no one ever complained. So there's a couple of things. Number one,
partially that Burning Hands was vastly increased between PF1, when, by the way, it was trash in PF1.
No,
if you didn't have a way to raise your caster level
in PF1,
the minimum caster level.
If PF1, if you weren't casting all of your level 1 spell slots as Color Spray or Sleep, you were doing it wrong. But
correct. Or some other thing that came out later. But Burning Hands did a D4.
It was nothing
at first level. It was increased to 2d6. I just put it up to a much higher amount when I was redoing the math. And I remember the rest of the design team was like, "That's a lot more. Are you sure?" I was like, "Yes." Maybe it should be even higher than this, but it definitely needs to be at least this much. The D4 is just nothing. It is useless.
Feeling Fuzzy says that they have seen a lot of people complaining about weak AF Burning Hands. But I mean, my point is that's always been the case. But let me address a couple of key issues. Number one, I like 4th edition D&D. And in 4th edition D&D, all of the classes follow the same basic template where you would roll and do hit, and you would do some damage, and you got to add your stat modifier to the damage. And wizards did that with their int, fighters did that with their strength, rogues did that with their dex. And that was fun, and that was cool, and it's fine, it's whatever. But in Pathfinder 2nd edition, I have to admit that as someone who's obviously very familiar with the system, it is a little confusing when you're starting the game off, you get your cantrip, and your cantrips are adding your ability stat modifier. But then you go to test your Burning Hands or your Fireball, and that doesn't. It does feel like, wait a second, are these the same thing? Are these different things? How come the Produce Flame generates this bonus to damage, but the ray spell or the spell attack spell doesn't?
That's exactly why I think that Paizo wanted to remove it. I'm the one who initially put it in, so I'm at fault here for creating this expectation, probably, I guess, right from when I put it in. But as far as we know from things that they've mentioned before, in streams and other things like that, it's that anti-parallelism, Derik. That's absolutely right. It's not because they're we can rebalance this and make it vastly different than it was before. I think they want to keep the baseline the same, but they're trying to remove that question of why. Why is it like that?
Now, that being said, I don't like the way they did it. And the only reason I say that is because before it was like, oh, what's the spell rank of your produce flame? Oh, it does that many D4. Now it's 2 and then it scales at 1. So it's always just like 1 or higher. And it's
very easy to remember with that.
And so all I'm saying is, here's how I would have changed it. Produce flame, right? Just make it do like, I don't know, 1d8.
I mean, you mean going back to the playtest where it heightens +2 with 1d8? Or you mean 1d8 and then scale by d4 and then you have multiple different kinds of dice?
No, I just mean scale by d8. Right? Like maybe scale by like d6 then or something like that. Or maybe go d6 and scale that way. So it's a little bit weaker at level 1, but then it's like, oh, you do 9d6 at level 9.
D6. It's 2d6 at level 1 in melee and 1d6 every level after that.
But that's only in melee, right?
Yes.
But I'm saying I don't like that it's like 2 at level 1 and then 3 at level 2, rank 1 and then 3 at rank 2 and 4 at rank 3.
You think it would be better if it did like a d6 +2 or something like that for you, and then did more other d6s?
I just think it would be more elegant if the spell rank equaled the number of dice you rolled, right? And I think that
I did like that.
Yeah, I think that's very. I'm like, oh, I like that a lot. Like for example, I'm not saying that like I think the Cone of Cold thing was a little bit of a weird change because I like that Cone of Cold did more damage than Fireball, but anyways, now that it has the ability to be a burst, it kind of like, well, it probably should do the same damage as Fireball. But Fireball was nice because it goes, what's the spell rank of your Fireball? Multiply that by 2. That's how many dice you roll, right? It's a very simple formula. It's an internal heuristic when we're playing these very complicated games. Believe it or not everyone plays Pathfinder 2nd Edition in Foundry using their Path Builder. Okay, some of us play it at a table, and it's nice just to have these sort of shorthands that we can just kind of do. But anyways, yeah.
So we had a couple of super chats. Maybe we should look at those.
All right.
So there's a shout out for Knights of Last Call from Rick Sherman.
What up, Rick?
Where's the other one?
There was like 4. You guys are just going off. Ignoring the world around you.
I literally don't see any other one after
shout out, and then the one before that is.
It was about the War Priest. We talked about that.
We did that one.
Is it a bad move?
Didn't say anything.
Oh, the War Priest. Okay, what about?
Yeah, we did the War Priest, and we did
James.
the +4. We did Zebiv, and James Machado didn't say anything. I tried to look for something.
Yes, I didn't see anything from James.
So the other thing that I wanted to bring up,
oh my god,
which is probably somewit of a
don't get Derik on a Friday. Jeez,
it's probably.
Hey, I like hearing what Derik has to say.
I know. I'm kidding.
It's probably it's kind of a moot point in a certain sense because a character with a higher, say, intelligence score is going to be, or charisma, is going to be better at hitting the AC defense with their ignition than a character who does not. But between dedications and things of that nature, it's very easy for another character to get cantrip, pretty low level, and their cantrip will scale at the same level as your cantrip, right? Like it's based on character level. So if my fighter who picked up ignition is level 8 or 9, their spell rank of their ignition is going to be 5, and the wizard's ignition is going to be spell rank 5. And now they do the same damage. I could see where that could feel a little off to some people because it's like, well, shouldn't my wizard be doing more damage? I get it. They are more accurate. They're going to hit more often, but it does feel a little, I don't know. There's a little bit of a breakdown.
What about focus spells, Derik?
Sure. That's a great point as well. But
because those also heighten out to the full amount.
That is true. But I do feel like in the past, focus spells probably weren't as big as they might be in the future now because of the changes.
They're going to be huge.
Oh, it's going to be huge. I mean, listen, we can talk about that. I love the change. I know you think it's going to be overpowered and broken, but
I never said that.
I thought you said that it was too powerful.
No, that's not what I said at all.
All right.
I talked about it yesterday on the stream.
I missed that yesterday.
That's not what I said. I said I said that I think that it's going to completely change the meta, and that everyone will be strongly pushed to take 3 focus points, whether they're a martial or a spellcaster, unless they are very feat starved and not playing free archetype.
Yeah.
And that it's going to change the dynamic between GMs and players, where GMs are going to be pushed towards giving players 30 minutes to rest, and the times that they take that away will be kind of the only time you can really use low threat encounters, because focus point spam will just nova low threats to the degree that they are as easy as trivial threats. But those changes don't mean it's overpowered or it's worse. It just means it's different. It's a different meta. It's definitely game changing.
There you go. Okay, maybe
you could say game warping in a way, but it doesn't mean that it's bad.
Yeah, agree. Okay, all right. I probably misinterpreted what you had said in terms of game warping as being a negative connotation, but you're just simply saying it is going to change things. And I agree with everything that you said, and I quite frankly am here for it. I think Pathfinder 2nd Edition needs to lean into that heroic fantasy trope. And you know, the game has done such a good job of making it so that you don't have to pack your bags, go home, and rest for the night. Like your characters can keep going forward. They can use their treat wounds. They can use their battlefield medicine. They have their cantrips. Now they have their focus spells, and now their focus spells are better than ever. And outside of that, look, focus spells to me were always encounter powers, basically just in a different form from 4th edition, in a way that people apparently found very appetizing, in a way that they hated everything about 4th edition, but they loved about.
Well, I think it's because it's in presentation and lore, and the way that you're willing to respect the mechanics and the world. Like 4th edition was very, very clinical about it. It was just like, look, this is happening during the encounter. It's an encounter power. It was kind of like, you know, a style of architecture that exposes the girders and everything that's behind. Whereas Pathfinder 2 had more like,
you know, had a nice layer of paint.
Layers of plaster and other things around it, so that you're looking at the architecture and not the frame underneath. I think that's a big reason why there was a different response to them.
But outside of that, I like this change because, again, I like elegance in game mechanics. And I always felt like the focus point system was a little kludgy, because it was this weird kind of like, oh yeah, focus points, those are the things that you get back every encounter. It's like, well, no, I have 3, but if I spend more than 3, more than 2 in any one encounter, then my new max for the day is 2. And if I spend 2, I can go back to 1, but I can never go back to 2. And then it's just like this really weird resource tracking system for something that was supposed to be, I think, you know, easy to track. So I think the new focus point system, just making it just like, oh, 10 minutes, get another one back. Another 10 minutes, get another one back. Another 10 minutes, get my third one back. I think that makes it a much, it's more like a hit point.
It is massively easier to understand and learn. That is for certain. And it's very changing in the meta, but that doesn't mean it's a bad change at all. I think that, honestly, to go back to the critiques and people's responses, I think that the thing is that people are expecting that the change to Ignition is defining a new baseline, and that Paizo is trying to move the baseline down. Whereas really it's just showing an example of one spell that, due to many constraints that they had on the math, worked out at that direction. Like, I can't imagine that the Frostbite spell that they've vaguely talked about out loud and gave us none of the numbers for is not going to be very strong, because if you have the right team, even just pure out bludgeoning weakness, which it can do, even one bludgeoning weakness is a lot of damage at first level compared to general cantrip damage. And it can do bludgeoning weakness, and I think it's like if you break the orb of ice, it like does additional damage even on a success or something. They didn't preview it like in the text of this document. They talked about it out loud in one of their streams. So I think that Ignition is lower because when it's in range than before, and higher than before when it was in melee. Needle darts at rank 1, which, like you said, Derik, and you're correct, rank 1 is the rank that matters the most for cantrips, because their scaling is a lot lower than their starting amount, and they stop being as useful very quickly, probably by level 5.
Oh yeah, I would say they start. At level 3,
level
people
3
are not
they are
using
much less useful than they
level
were at 1,
5,
but you can still get through. But by level 5, rarely are you going to really see them in use. So rank 1 is the most important time, and needle darts is basically strictly superior to telekinetic projectile at rank 1. There's a few cases where you're fighting like that, like a creature that you want to do bludgeoning damage to, where telekinetic projectile has a small advantage, but needle darts does the same amount of damage at rank 1. It has twice the range. It has a critical effect with persistent damage. If you happen to have some precious metals, it can get through precious metal weaknesses and resistances. And so that shows that they're not going for an overall down. So I think that mostly people are upset partially because they're worried because they haven't seen everything and they're like, everything's going to go down to this much. Yeah. But I think it's very likely that it just is like there's going to be 1 or 2 cantrips that are going to be weaker than the others because of constraints. Daze was probably that for the core rulebook, and Ignition is probably one of those for the player core 1. That's what I think.
Yeah, for me, I go, even if they were flat coming out and saying we're nerfing cantrips, I would be like, okay, who cares? Like, I don't know. It's a cantrip. To me, it is my tertiary option, right? It is my third go-to. And I don't, maybe a lot of people play much lower level, maybe there's a lot of groups out there that like play level 1, 2, 3 Pathfinder, and then their campaign ends and they start again. Or maybe their campaign fizzles and they're always playing.
Statistics show that most play does happen in the lower levels.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, if you aren't routinely getting above level, like, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to spend 75% of a campaign above level 5, or 50% of the campaign if it's going to level 10. And that's usually how it works out. But if your characters are always just restarting or whatever, maybe then I do feel for you.
I can't remember the statistics on it, but it's somewhere around like 75% of play that happens in like the first 5 or so levels across everyone. But that also takes into account people who like pick up a game new and then play it for a little while and then stop.
Do you think they should? Well, let me ask you 2 questions. Do you think they should? And do you think they will nerf slow?
Well, they didn't change Longstrider 2 when they turned it into Tailwind. And I don't see, and Wall of Stone was referenced in the document and or in Rage of Elements and was not in the remaster preview, which means that Wall of Stone, which is probably like my biggest failure when converting these spells to put in the necessary
Wall of Stone is S tier
that I should have put in there. But they did not make changes to that. So based on those, my random tea leaf reading, which is completely uninformed other than by just looking at 2 other things and then guessing for a third thing, is that they probably did not change slow. Because I think they would have changed Wall of Stone before. If they were like, there's a few spells that like 75% of the community think are concerning in a small way, and they're very quick, simple fixes that you can make to them to remove that, then I think Wall of Stone would have been on that list for certain. And since it wasn't, that's why I would guess that slow did not get a change, but we don't know for sure.
Right.
We really have no idea other than completely guessing based on reading the tea leaves.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Somebody Yarrow asked me, he said, if cantrips are my tertiary go-to, what are your first and second go-to for caster attacks? Chain Lightning, Fireball, Cone of Cold,
Dragon Breath focus spell, maybe?
Magic Missile, Slow, Fear. I guess those aren't, maybe you don't consider those attack spells, but I do. Like, there's a lot of really, really amazing, great, awesome options for you to cast. And, yes, I understand that, like, well, my Mentalist wizard doesn't have a focus spell that does damage. Well, yeah, because you're a mind wizard. I mean, what do you...
Well, hold on. I think there was a more nuanced critique than that about the mentalism school that actually does have a point, which is... So, first of all, there's people being like, they don't like the change to schools overall, and I think the change to schools overall could be really cool. But
I think I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence.
In the specifics, mentalism does have 2 first level spells that are incapacitation or something like that. Somebody said, I need to look at it again. There were certain low spell levels where everything was incapacitation. And that's not just in the overall implementation of how can you do a school in general. I think the new idea for how you can do a school in general is really cool and could have a lot of benefits. But in the nitty gritty, if you pick multiple incapacitation as your only options at a low spell level, that is going to be a little rough. Yeah. Especially at first, where you can't even use a heightened version of a lower level spell, because those are not going to be useful at all at later levels. So they're more like, but that's not anything to say about the overall design of the wizard. But it is a valid point, I would say, about like very, very specific choices if the entire list was incapacitation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I actually I do agree with that. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't think, like, I think it's okay for different schools to have different things that they're good at and things that they're not good at. And, I would expect, the school of war or whatever to have a lot more options for doing, let's say, hit point damage than the school of mental clarity or something like that. Right.
100.
And I will say, and they kind of throw a little nod out there in there, which I thought was kind of like so the problem with this approach, Mark, is they're basically recreating custom class spell lists in a way, right?
I mean, not exactly. No more than bloodline spells were.
Sure, that's fair. But I like they put a nod in there, which they basically say, you and your GM may feel like a spell should be on this list, and if you do, it's fine to add it, like, which is technically always true. But I just like the idea of, like, that's how we're getting around having to update these lists. If a new spell comes out and you go, oh, this should totally be part of the school of the mind's eye or whatever, and it's not because it's in a new book, and it's like, well, no, look what it said. It says if you and your GM think that this spell should be in the school, then it should be, like, it's kind of.
By the way, I looked at Mentalism, it has Sure Strike, so I actually don't know what people were talking about the fact that it had 2 incapacitations, because there is a third one at first level as not incapacitation.
Is that is Sure Strike the new True Strike?
Probably True Strike, but we don't know.
I mean,
it has Dizzying Colors, which is probably Color
Spray. Yeah.
Sleep, which is probably Sleep.
Didn't have to change that one, apparently.
And Sure Strike.
Yeah, Sure
the weird thing about Sleep is I would maintain that the fact that it's even in there at first level is weird if you're removing OGLisms, because the effect of putting something to sleep should never have been a first level effect, and was literally only an OGLism that it got to be a first level effect, which is why we had to work so hard to put so many limits on what it could actually put to sleep, because putting something to sleep is an immediate death sentence.
Yeah. What sleep should be, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be incapacitation. Sleep should basically be called, like, I don't know, drowsy, and it should basically make the foes who get affected by it, they should be off guard. Like, it should just be like
that'd be great. But there was very little temperature. Like, when I was monkeying around with spell levels and changing names of things like paralyze and other things like that, and one of the proposals that I have was just, like, looking at what the effect of things were. It's just like, sleep is very vicious. Let's move it up to the level of deep slumber and just not have a first level sleep,
which is 4.
Yeah, and then, but it was like, no, there was a very strong pushback.
Well,
that was like, no, sleep has always been a first level spell, right?
You more than me, Mark, I'm sure, have had to deal with the curse of the sacred cow. So, people definitely have their. If the game doesn't have a sleep spell at first level, is it even a fantasy adventure game?
That's just what the fan base thinks at some point. And so removing OGL does allow that restriction to be removed in some ways, but it does look like sleep at the very least is still at first level.
Yeah.
Yes, I am staring at the other two. They put me to sleep with their spell. No, I'm you guys are, like, all at it. There's no space for me to jump in, so I'm just sitting here listening.
By all means, I mean, look, I think that they're, you know what I'm going to say here. I want them to do more. You want a 3rd edition, Derik.
I
do. Listen, I love the psychic.
You know what? Forget about 3rd edition. Just go to 4th. Just skip over. Just go right to 4th.
Let's go straight to 4th.
Yeah.
It's like iPhone. Like how they skipped the one. They just went straight from the whatever, like the 8 to the 10 or whatever, the X.
They didn't do that. No. You're thinking. No, Windows did that. Windows.
Windows did. You're right. Windows did that.
Derik always likes the 4th of anything, so I think that would be perfect for Derik. It's just like that. They just skip right to Pathfinder 4th edition.
I like Legend of the 5 Rings 5th edition of Legend of the 5 Rings. I liked Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition.
Okay.
Anyways, so there's some 3rds and 4ths and 5ths in there that I do like.
So the overreaction stream has been, and I didn't get any of my points in yet, but it's basically everyone should calm down. It's a cantrip, and it's one spell out of 1,000. Relax.
I just have to, people. I see people saying, like, what are you doing after? It's like, I don't like. Okay, I think there's a couple things here. Let me introduce you to the world of spellcasting. Number 1, you don't have to buy weapon runes You don't have to buy weapon property runes. In fact, they're not even options for you to do that. That gives you a lot more money. So what should you do that money with? Scrolls. Buy scrolls. They are
or wands if you like it the spell enough.
Yeah, if you're gonna cast this spell more than 7 or 8 times, I would say get it in a wand. But wands can obviously be cost prohibitive. Scrolls, however, are extremely affordable, and they are a great way to pad your repertoire. So that if the encounter day or the adventuring day ends up going to a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, a 6th encounter, you can keep using, because scrolls have never been better than in Pathfinder 2nd edition, because they key off of your level, not the scrolls level. So it is incredibly powerful. You can pick up some spells, like a level 3 scroll of heal is just as useful at level 15 as it is at level 5, because it does the same thing. So there's no incapacitation on it. It's a saving throw. It uses your class DC, or your spell DC. So scrolls is the answer. Wands is also the answer.
You said heal, but do you mean fear?
I'm sorry. I meant slow.
Oh, slow. Okay.
Yeah, slow. Sorry. I don't know what I said. Slow. But also fear. If I get a fear heightened to 3 and take that as a scroll, that's going to allow me to affect 6 targets with a fear spell. But it doesn't have incapacitation. I could use that scroll at level 18 when, by the way, that scroll literally costs me 0.0001% of my character's total wealth. I have more spare change in my character's shoe to buy 20 of those scrolls. So
yeah, we talked about consumables and prices yesterday on the stream.
Yeah.
So I get what you two are saying about this, but I do understand where people are coming from on ignition, but I think it's because they, like I've said before, are kind of using that as just like we were looking through the tea leaves with Wall of Stone, they're using that with Wall of Stone, and therefore using that I decided that slow probably won't be changed as a guess. They're using ignition as a guess to assume that there's going to be a concentrated effort to lower cantrips that I just do not see enough evidence to think that that's correct. However, if there was a concentrated effort, if I'm just wrong, which I think is very unlikely, and needle darts gets an immediate errata because they didn't intend for it to be up that, all the ones in Rage of Elements are the wrong amount somehow, and only ignition was right. In fact, that's the highest, and all of them go up to 5 or less, which does mean that they lose a significant, yes, it's only a minus 1.5 damage on range, but let's say all of the range are 2d4, everything's 2d4 or less. That is a significant blow for spellcaster, damaging spellcasters at level 1 and 2. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that it would be. And while at the same time saying, I think this is a hasty generalization, I think there's no evidence to show that that's what they're doing. And in fact, everything we've heard about other things like Frostbite seem to indicate to me that ignition is probably likely to be the one that's like Daze right now, that is just somewhat a little on the low end because it rounded down, because rounding up would have been more extreme of a change to the math balance than rounding down was.
By the way, Rick Bullard in chat did say that I was correct. There was no iPhone 9.
Okay. Well, actually, 9 gets skipped over a lot for some reason.
Because you're so close to 10, and 10 seems so sexy.
I think because Windows 8 and then Windows,
Windows X.
Yeah, they always change. They always skip over that 9. I think they should do what Mortal Kombat did and just go back to 1. Mortal Kombat just released was about to release Mortal Kombat 1. They were so far up that they just went all the way back down. Xbox did that. Xbox One.
Isn't God of War 5 just called God of War?
Yes, it is, but it's yes, it is God of War, one of my favorite games of all time. But yes, so you know what, Pathfinder instead of 2nd edition will just be Pathfinder 1st edition, and no one will get confused with that at all.
Pathfinder 1.
Pathfinder 1. So even 1st edition, just Pathfinder 1.
You mean
D&D 1? Oh, look at that.
It's not called that anymore. But,
anyways.
Ryan King in chat made a really, really good point, which is people are comparing ignition to produce flame. Maybe you should compare it to Gouging Claw. Gouging Claw does the same amount of persistent damage as ignition. Gouging Claw is a currently extant cantrip that is a melee cantrip that does 1d6 plus 4 at first rank, and then goes up by a d6 each time. It does d4 persistent that goes up by a d4 each time on a crit. Ignition at melee range does 1/2 of a point less damage than Gouging Claw. In exchange for that 1/2 of a point less, 2d6 and 7d6 plus 4, it has a ranged option that while it does less damage exists, and Gouging Claw does not have.
Mark, you're forgetting that at level 20, okay, that you would be doing an additional 2 or 3 points of damage.
No, you're right.
When creatures have 350
But at level 20, you would definitely not actually use a cantrip. And Derik, I agree with you at that point.
Yeah, right. That's my point.
But at low levels, when you would, and I think, that was an interesting point from Ryan King in chat, is that if you think about it as in comparison to the Gouging Claw cantrip, it actually looks a lot more interesting. And that's a good point too. But I still think it will wind up being shown to be one that was kind of rounded down, and that some of the other ones will be ones that people think are better when they look at all of them. But we won't know until we see them. Certainly, Needle Dart at rank 1 is way better than Ignition at rank 1 because it does more damage. It does 3d4, so that's actually more damage at both range and melee than Ignition does. And its persistent damage on a crit is less, but that won't happen as often. And its range is quite high. So there's more that we're going to have to see, I think.
There was a couple super chats.
No, there wasn't. There was like one.
No, King Fate 20 said, focus spells aren't a universal fix. Unless your cleric has fire, decay, destruction, protection, or earth domains, by the way, you likely have no good combat options. Right, but if your cleric isn't a cleric who has access to fire, decay, destruction, protection, or earth, why should your cleric have a good combat damage option?
I mean, they could also like take an archetype for it too. Right. If they want to be a big damaging option, cleric, you could take an archetype for a damaging option. And on a similar but not exactly the same point, Wupelstein had a super chat of liking the idea of adding more emphasis to focus spells, but worrying that it is 1-to-1 options to feat choices. Maybe getting 2 options for focus spells per feat would be better. So, like,
I don't think I
probably
understand
wind
that.
up bloating you out with a lot of focus spells that you would have to choose between. Yeah, and it makes it less 1-per-1 in the first 3 about like points to spells. But I mean, you could consider a house rule where you combine them like that.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that I think it's totally fine to have like, look, I have 3 focus spells. I maybe started the game with 1. I picked up 2 from feats, and in every combat, I have the option to use one of them 3 times, each one time, 2 of them 1 time, or 1 of them twice, and then use another one. Like, I think that's a lot of, combat options. And if somebody wants to take that 4th focus spell, which obviously has diminishing returns because you're not going to get an extra focus point for it. But now you have, 4 choose 3. That's fine. I don't think that's like a terrible price to pay. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have that same concern. I don't share that same concern that the community does in that respect, about the spells in particular. I do like that Wish is a wit ritual. I thought that was a nice little change.
Like having a mega wish that is bigger than the other wish can definitely be cool. It's rare, and it is definitely the kind of ritual that you only give to your players if you really want ridiculous shenanigans, because it absolutely does not make any attempt to prevent significant shenanigans, which can be perfect for the right campaign.
So why don't we?
So to clarify, King Fate, he said, ignoring protection, I said combat, not damage. Support is very good, but many cleric domains have very niche focus spells that are rarely useful. I don't disagree with you. There are a lot of focus spells that clerics get because it's tied specifically to their domain, and they wanted to make it very like, oh, it's that cleric's domain spell. But when you read it, you go, why would I ever need to cast this potentially dozens of times a day? It doesn't really feel like this should be a focus spell. This feels like this should be a spell slot spell and maybe have a little bit more of a punch pizzazz to it. But it doesn't feel like something that I would need to be casting all the time. Focus spells should be the things that you're casting all the time, in my personal opinion.
I would say that the flip side to that question about the domains that have some niche spells in them is that actually the change makes you more likely to get some of those niche spells, as long as you can get at least one that is bread and butter. Because if you have, let's say, your protection, or you have like the earth one that shoots out a rock, and you start with that, then you rush your other domains and you get some basic domain spells that are like, yeah, I can figure out if someone's lying or something. And you're like, okay, now if I ever need to do that, I can. And in fights, I can shoot 3 rocks because I have the rock one and I got 3 focus points. And anytime I need it, I can use those 2 niche ones from the other domain. So I think that it actually gives a good space for those more niche focus options, as long as you always have at least one that you can make your bread and butter.
No, I actually think that makes a lot of sense, Mark, because it's like you're basically like, look, you were already priced into taking a feat if you wanted more focus points anyways. Yes. You're doing this now. All this is doing is just, it's giving you the power increase in the form of more focus points, but it's also increasing your versatility, because you can use these you could just spam the really good one if you want. But if the situation is there, you can use one of your little, silly niche ones.
Right. Arguably, it's better to take the niche ones than it is to take another one that demands the same actions.
There's diminishing returns.
As the rock throwing one.
Right. You're
like, oh, you can't use both of them.
Right. I have one that does damage, but I have this other one that does damage. It's like there's diminishing returns on a certain point. I mean, maybe there's damage types, and that could be a thing, but generally speaking, I will say that in general, I think that Amorphous Ursine, which is just a great name, said I would like, I'd still like to see every deity have a selection of 1 to 2 spells that you could call bread and butter. And I do agree with that. I think that it would be nice to be like, oh, this domain or this deity has these sort of like really reliable, solid go-to focus spells. But again, I'm saying that as someone who played a lot of 4th edition D&D and really liked it. And I liked what Encounter Powers brought to the game. It brought a sense of consistency while still making it an interesting tactical choice, because it was like, look, if something's a focus spell and it's good, you're going to see this effect a lot. Like I had a cleric, halfling cleric of Saren Ray in my last Pathfinder 2 campaign, and they ended up picking up, I think it's either fire, light, or healing. It's one of those 3 domains, but you have that one, the luminescent reservoir, the one where you charge up every round, and it's like 1 action to cast, and it just builds up healing, and you can either drop it as a great spell. And I cast it literally every single fight. It was like the first thing I did on every single fight. Round 1, cast a positive luminescent reservoir, whatever it's called. But it kind of became part of my character's, signature shtick. And so if it's going to be this sort of bread and butter effect, it should be something that I think it's useful. It's in multiple situations. And I think having that is not a bad thing. But anyways, sun, see, I didn't even get it right. It's the sun domain. That, by the way, might be my favorite spell in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So in terms of flavor, fun, effectiveness, action economy,
I think it's pretty cool.
I think it's fantastic. And it's a focus spell. All right. I almost got the name right. Thank you, Rule of Cool.
Almost. Not
I
quite.
cast it, you know what? I cast it every single combat. Don't know the name.
So,
I start glowing.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back to Derik ranting for 3 hours.
I'm mostly agreeing with Mark, actually.
No, you're just ranting, but you are agreeing. I didn't say you were disagreeing. I just said you're ranting.
I think that we agree on a lot of things. Where we disagree, there's an interesting distinction to be drawn, and that we can respect each other's opinions on it too.
Yeah, I don't think you're like an idiot for being wrong. I just think I'm like,
wow.
I'm just like, oh well, Mark. I mean, you're coming at this from a different angle than me. But no, I am in all likelihood, in all seriousness. Look, they wanted to change their game. They're doing it. I'd love to see them do more, but they're not, and that's okay. They are changing a lot, though. To act like they're not is yeah, sure. They're just changing the name of everything. That's still a big change. And so but they're making the best out of the situation. I think it's a good move.
Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, 10, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages, and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they're releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click the link below and back the Kickstarter today.
Well, we're back. Look at that. That was so fast. I didn't even get up. It was so fast. Oh, so I had a nice nap for that last hour. Derik jumps in double feet first. He's in full Gen Con mode. He can't wait.
Best 4 days in gaming, Steven.
Oh, God.
I want to hear Steven's ideas, too, though. I was excited to hear what Derik had to say and to make comments on it, but I want to hear what Steven has to say, too.
Okay. My turn. So, here's the deal. I've been watching a lot of videos on Baldur's Gate 3. Trust me, this is going to lead to this. And because I'm very excited, and I've been reading a ton about it. I love CRPGs. I love Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, some of my favorite games of all time. I love Larian Studios. I actually got my laptop ready to go because I know I'm going to be playing tons of Baldur's Gate while I'm at Gen Con. Not at all. I won't even open it. I guarantee I'm not going to look at Baldur's Gate once the whole, because it comes out on Thursday, and I'm like, oh, great timing. Thank you.
It is Gen Con. You might see just a bunch of people sitting around with their laptops out playing.
I guarantee it. I guarantee we're going to see lots of people play. But I did get it ready because I am going on vacation as soon as I come back from Gen Con, and I am going to play on vacation. That I'm going to definitely do. But anyhow, I was watching all these videos, and one of the videos goes on to explain other CRPGs that are similar, because see, it's a 2.5D, 2.5D, role-playing game on a computer, and they of course mentioned Owlcat Games' Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous, which is the last one that came out a couple years ago, and that's an excellent, that was probably one of the best ones out. And they said Pathfinder, it's a version of Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. And that's what they said. And it stuck to me. And I was like, wow. And this was one of those YouTubers that is like 1 million people. And of course, like 500,000 people, like a lot of people are watching this. And it stuck to me when they said that. Then this is recent. Like, this is a video from like a week ago. And they're like, Pathfinder, if you don't know what that is, it's a version of Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, and this is why they're doing it, because if you think about it, and you actually mentioned this way in the beginning of the stream, is that you have D&D First Edition, right? Sorry, you have D&D 3.5, and then Pathfinder First Edition, which was literally 3.5 redone. 3.75 is lots of people. And it is, Pathfinder was a derivative of 3.5 in Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So that's correct. But now you have Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which I feel has this like very small tendril to Dungeons and Dragons. And these small tendrils are little things like Magic Missile and Tax of Opportunity and all the things they're taking out. And it's like these little tendrils, and they're still attached. But they're mostly very different games, especially if you look at 5th edition. 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition couldn't be more different if you tried. They're very different games. They're similar but different. And now all they're doing is saying, you know what? It's time to sever these tendrils once and for all. And they have these, they're called disruption events in business terms. Disruption events which wake everyone up. Probably one of the biggest disruption events that everyone knows is the iPhone. When the iPhone was announced, now think about how long it takes for you to develop a piece of hardware. We're talking years, okay? It's years and years of development. And no one knew it was coming in the industry. And there's people that are making all these flip phones and was making all these phones and they're getting ready. When the iPhone was announced and they showed that here it is, it's literally a handheld computer. It was that day that every one of these companies, and you can read about it, there's a lot of articles on this, that they literally had to just stop. They're like, you know what? We're done. Like just stop. We have to start immediately come out with phones that compete and are doing this, because if they're doing it, we are, and we're going to get destroyed. It's a paradigm shift in the industry of phones. And I think the OGL event was this shift in our industry where it's like, you know what? D&D is really trying to be its own thing. They're trying to go in this completely different direction. Obviously, they were trying to kill everyone who was a competitor and had even a small tendril to D&D. They were trying to control and potentially kill, especially if the OGL went through, which it didn't. But everyone woke up and realized that they have to distance themselves from D&D as much as possible and become their own game. And that is what this all is. And it bothers me when people are arguing over, and I saw people in the chat, I read every chat, they're like, Steve is nothing more than a shill for Paizo, and, you know, I'm doing nothing more than defending them. I'm actually not. I'm defending the hobby. I'm defending everyone. Because if we stay attached to Dungeons and Dragons, if we stay attached to anything that could potentially destroy the hobby and destroy the gaming we like, it can happen. And don't think it can't, because we got lucky. We got lucky that went the way it did, because it could have gone the other way. And I've seen it go the other way many times in other industries. There's plenty of history of Microsoft through the 80s and 90s, especially destroying other companies left and right. They were famous for it. And we got very lucky this didn't happen. And we could have been talking, we could have had very different conversations right now if things didn't go that way. So everyone's focusing on the wrong thing. The thing I'm focusing on is, look, it's going to be painful. But now D&D is its own thing, and Pathfinder is its own thing. It is beholden to no one and nothing. And it can grow and expand and become 3rd edition, 4th edition, and go on forever. And D&D can never have any influence over it ever again. And that is my opinion on this, is that everyone really has to stop looking at the minutia and look at the big picture and realize why this is happening and what is going on. Do you think Paizo wanted to disrupt their entire business plan for 2023 and 24 and stop everything they were doing to put out these 4 books? Do you really think that they wanted the time and expense and the nightmare of what they're doing to get these books out? Of course not. This was a nightmare for them. This wasn't something fun. This wasn't something they were expecting to do. This was something that woke everyone up. And let me tell you, we work with a lot of other people. We're working with DM's Lair because they woke up too, because they did everything in 5e. Now they're starting to do their Lair magazine in Pathfinder and 5e because they realize they can't latch onto one system. It's very, very dangerous to latch on. So that is my take on this, is that everyone really has to calm down and realize how good we have it, and that this might be a little painful, but in the end, a cantrip doing 1 point less damage is really nothing to worry about, nothing to cry about, nothing to post pages on Reddit about. Relax. You still have a game, and that's what's important. And it's a game we're all going to enjoy and get to play. Okay? There you go. That's my take.
Okay.
All right.
Like, I understand why they care about that 1.5 points of damage for cantrips, since damage is low enough that that's a high percentage at rank 1. And I've said that before, especially if they see it as an omen that all cantrips are going down and down and down from there, which I believe, as I've said multiple times, it is not. There is the ghost of Jess has said, excited to fistfight Derik Malenda at Gen Con to defend the Great Wheel's honor. I saw it on X or whatever it is now.
Yes, X. Listen, let me
in response to Derik's earlier statement at the beginning that said that Jess would fistfight him about that.
I did say, in the context of Planescape, I think it makes total and absolute sense. But in the context of you're a material plane adventurer and you want to have some fun with the outer planes, then the Great Wheel is thumbs down. Sorry, Jess.
Yeah. And people in chat pointed out to strengthen your point, Steven, you can still use Produce Flame.
Yeah.
They tried to make the game as compatible.
That's the other thing. No, everyone's going crazy.
Of the original.
Everyone's going crazy. It's like, okay, then use Produce Flame.
Yeah, the other thing is, okay, then I don't know, then have casters do double damage. There. All the people out there are like, they nerf casters, they don't do any damage. Just make a rule in your game. All spells do twice as much damage as they used to do.
Yeah.
Guess what? You just solved the issue. Now your casters are going to do so much damage. The marshals are going to look like little bitches. You're going to love it. Just the way it's like, it's so easy.
Look, people want permission. This is someone who publishes books.
They want official permission from the game to do that, Derik. If they do, it's different. It's like Steven always says about when he won a game in God mode and then he never wanted to play it again.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
you want the official game to allow the thing that you want. It does not feel the same if you just hacked it in.
Rule 1, page 1, Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rulebook. This is your game. Do whatever you wish with it as you wish. This is your world. The rules, the world, the story, the adventures, make them up. Do whatever you want with them. This is your world now.
Yeah, but a lot of people do.
Just because you can change the game to be the way that you want it doesn't mean that it is the way you want it. Starting out. So I get why people can be upset about that.
People want numbers go burr. That's what they want. Numbers go burr.
Also, okay, I'm also going to bring something else, and this is actually why I had you on the stream, Derik. I'm going to let my dog in because she's going crazy. Stop it.
I like dogs. I like dogs a lot. But somebody said, they said, what about grab and push?
Wait. I'll do that in a second. So here's the thing.
Oh. I didn't know it grab and push change.
They did. That's the one I couldn't really come up with a good explanation for exactly why.
Well, this will be new to me. But
why the change came in? There's multiple possible ones. I don't know what the explanation is.
Well, it's not automatic to grab. But anyhow, is that so? Because you're a big fan of 4th edition, and I actually am a big fan of 4th too. But here's the thing: people are constantly asking for balance. And I've had this rant before, but people are like, "Oh, balance." The beginning of 4th edition, I never played. What was it called when they remastered 4th edition? Essentials. Yeah, I never played Essentials. But the thing with 4th edition is that 4th edition was so well balanced. I felt with combat and abilities that it was boring in some ways. I felt it was fun. But every single class felt the same. The only difference was the names of the abilities, but they all played the same way.
Yes, if by that you also mean that the abilities did different things, like healing and conditions and buffs and debuffs, and they all But if you mean every character got to do something on their turn that involved rolling a die and applying effects, you are right. They were all exactly the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Was that a very well-balanced system? Yeah, it was incredibly well-balanced. Was it boring? Yes. One of the big issues I remember with 4E is that they had really weird limits. They had very weird floors and ceilings with damage. So it was very hard to feel like you really did a ton of damage because you were very limited in how much you can do. You don't have big swings, which made
points were very high compared to damage from when I played it.
Yeah, they were.
They were, and because of that, because it was so tight, you think the math was tight? Was it?
They fixed the math later. Monster Manual 3.
I'm talking, but I'm talking about the beginning, and by then it was a lot too late.
By the beginning, yeah, I agree. I would actually 100% agree. There was a lot of hit point bloat in those early Monster Manual books.
It was ridiculous.
The monsters hit like a wet noodle. They did not do a lot of damage back to you.
Yeah, it took forever, and there weren't these big, long. Swings. And one of the nice things about Pathfinder is we were playing the other day and people were critting. Now my guys are level 15, so they're doing 80, 90, 100 points of damage, but boy,
that's it.
Well, keeping that per head, you're right.
Steven, you haven't lived until you've had a magus who has the psychic archetype, who then takes imaginary blade and uses it in melee to add an additional 10d8 to their true striking spell strike, which then crits and does like 275 damage at like level 15.
Well, keep in mind, my guys actually don't. They also take they take not trait. What are they called?
They take the fluffy bullshit.
No. They take attribute flaws on purpose. On purpose. They just make their characters weaker. They like to actually play on hard mode, and not only on hard mode, they purposely nerf their characters to make things tougher. So to them, that's like God mode. That's too easy.
Got it. So one of those types. Got it.
It's fun, but they like to feel like when they do that damage that they earned it, that they didn't cheese. They don't like to cheese. And they used to, trust me, 20 years ago, they were cheesers big time, but they're past that. They're like at levels. But anyhow, the point is that when they hit, it's fun. And it's like, and you get, cause they think they would rather have the rush of having a rare hit that does a lot of damage and does well than just turning it on when they want to by just doing this sequence of steps and voila. Like, they do it all the time. They don't use their best abilities. Even they're in a boss fight right now. And I started off the boss fight with power word kill on the healer. Dead. First round. And they were like, huh. Okay. Then they get him back up. And they're still not using them. I'm like, guys, this is it. This is the fight. We're like, we're okay. And I'm like, wow, you guys are okay. They're not even using
your group is exactly level 14 when?
They're level 15, but yeah.
Wait, did you have like a heightened power word kill?
No. The bad guy did power word kill on them. The bad guy's level 17.
Kill, only instantly kills a 14th level character. They have to be pretty low on hit points.
No, it brings them down to 0. It brings them down to 0 hit points up to level 15.
Yes. It doesn't kill them.
No. Okay, it didn't kill them. It brought them down. Sorry. They brought him down, but it didn't kill them.
To be honest, like the absolute most brutal encounter that you could throw on the level 14 party that is like within the boundary is probably like an enemy sorcerer.
Yeah.
It starts in range and uses 3 power word kills on 3 out of 4 party members.
Yeah.
After winning initiative.
They
all die. Yeah. And then the 4th person is like, okay, what are you gonna do?
Well, this is what happened. It's written in the book. Whoever damages this person first gets power word kill. So we roll initiative, and then this is the healer, and the healer's like, wait a second, I have my demoralize effect that happens during initiative, and I go, okay, go ahead and do it. He rolls like a 20, demoralizes her. She wins initiative, and I'm like, you shouldn't have done that. And then he looks at her, but it's only 30 feet. So she's like way in the back. So she runs up, and she's like, death. And he just drops. And they were like, what just happened? I was like,
were the podcast listeners like going wild when that happened?
I don't know about wild, but we were. They were like, because we haven't seen. Yeah, they were like, but you know what? The guy who dropped, he was like golf clapping. He's like good. They're not sitting there crying. They're 15th level character. They're like, good. Bring it, baby. Let's fight. Like they're up for it. But that's the thing. It's like those massive swings is what makes the game fun. And I argue what Pathfinder 2nd Edition does is so hard that I feel it's almost impossible, because I see people saying here that, oh, well, you have 3.5, which was like the power swings toward the point of they were so wide that it was unbalanced. Then you have 4th edition where it was so narrow that it was boring. And I think 2nd edition of Pathfinder is right in the middle. It's that perfect spot where the math is tight, but you could still have those big swings, but it's not unwieldy. Does that make sense? It's like right there. So I like the way it is now. And you know what? You're going to have a couple of outliers. It just happens. So, by the way, what I mean by saying the 4 E-classes all did the same thing sounds absolutely crazy. They all did, because they all had daily abilities, they had encounter abilities, and they had at-will abilities.
Also known as spell slots, focus spells, and cantrips.
Exactly. Whether you were the fighter, whether you were the thief, whether you were the wizard, it all was the same.
Steven, do you think sorcerers, wizards, witches, oracles, summoners, psychic, do you think they're all the same? Because they all use spell slots, focus spells, up to 3, and cantrips.
I think they're similar, but they do a better. David did a better job of making them feel different, but I think they're similar. But
because by that logic,
well, but
all of the caster classes except for the wave.
Oh yeah. No, you're not wrong. Okay, look, caster classes are very similar because they're all caster classes. The problem wasn't the caster classes. The problem was that the melee classes felt the same as casters. That was the problem because they all use the same abilities.
Sure. I mean, you're right. I'd much rather take the alternative, which is a Reddit subreddit full of people bitching about how casters and marshals are nerfed or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I'd rather, but whatever. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm okay with the caster's role in Pathfinder 2nd edition. I think.
Well, people are really arguing whether I'm right on this or not.
You're definitely not right.
Good. I actually, let's put it this way. I played a sorcerer. There you go. I said it. From level 1 to 20 in 4E.
That sounds awesome. Were you a wild magic, light, or storm?
I don't remember. I probably was wild magic because I'm.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't a sorcerer. I was a warlock. Oh, wait. What was the one that you could do shadow and all that? Was that a warlock?
Depends what you mean by with shadow.
Oh, it was very hard to bring me down. Like it was impossible to. I had ways to teleport out, and I always had
You probably were a warlock.
I was a warlock. Yeah, I was a warlock. Sorry. Warlock was awesome. I liked Warlock a lot.
Fantastic.
But the thing is, 4E did get better as you got higher level. It definitely felt like a more robust system. But not people just don't play up past 10th level. They just don't.
I mean, 4E went to 30, so yeah. I mean, if you were stopping it before 10th level,
we stopped at 20.
You were only getting 1/3 of the experience. But
right.
I mean, but at the same time, I mean, look at in Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're low level, the only thing that's really distinguishing a barbarian from a ranger from a monk is one class feature, one class.
Oh yeah, no. At low levels, everyone's very similar. The main difference, you see, the thing is at low level.
Hell, aside from strength difference, a barbarian and a wizard have the same attack bonus.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's actually the big difference. The biggest difference at low levels is hit points. It's like how hard is it to kill, and that's the big difference. But then as you go up higher levels, the big difference is what you can do, and it actually still is hit points because our monk was 258 hit points or something, and the healer has 130, or 100. I think they're up to about 150. But they cannot get in that. They cannot be in those fights because if they get hit, they go down.
I mean, I really enjoy higher level Pathfinder.
I love it. It's so much fun.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think the game really starts for me.
15th level has been a blast.
For me, my favorite level in the game probably is 7th, because
that's most people's.
Yeah, at that point, your spellcasters have a lot of spell slots available to them. Your spellcasters just went to expert. Everybody's got 3 or 4 class feats under their belt. If you're into a dedication, you've picked up enough that you have 3 of them. You can really feel like you're really singing. You have enough class features. And you have enough money that you can actually start to kind of really play with.
I will say
stuff. It's a really great option, and I love it beyond. I mean, I get so excited. It's like you're like, as soon as you're excited for Cone of Cold, before you know it, Chain Lightning's around the corner, and then you're getting into the power words, and it's just like, and maze and crazy.
It's so you're getting really crazy, and I'll tell you, there's nothing more fun than when someone has a legendary skill. They roll, and then I say, and they're like, 48, and I look at them and go, fail, and they're like, what? I'm like, I'm legendary. How am I failing? And I'm like, fail, baby. It's like, don't even talk to me unless you're in the 50s.
Like, by the way, classic noob mistake there, Steven.
Yeah.
My group that I was a player in, we went up against a really high level, I think it was a Solar or something like that had multiple power word kills heightened to level 10, and we did not die instantly. And do you know how we did that?
How?
Level 4 silence.
Well, keep in mind this, they want initiative.
Power word kill, yeah, but level 4 silence is an emanation that you can cast on yourself before you go into that fight, and
it doesn't last very long. So you definitely have to know you're going to do that fight right after that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's because power word kill, all the power words have the auditory trait. If you can't hear them, they don't affect you.
Oh, okay. Well, tell them.
That's true.
I'm playing the DM, so.
So for everybody who says there's no defense against power word, stun, blind, or kill, all you gotta do
is. Yeah, all you gotta do is make also a very brutal first round if you triple cast it on the party.
Yeah, but keep in mind they probably wouldn't have done it because they didn't even bother buffing up. They knew where they were going into. They knew what was coming, and they literally just opened up the door and charged in. And I was like, guys, you want to like buff? They're like, nah. I'm like, nothing. Like nope. I was like, okay. And this is only round 1. We stopped after the first round of combat, and I'm actually about to start. And you know what's going to be the first spell of in round 2 that the boss is going to cast?
Power word kill again?
No. They only have one. They only have one.
Level 9 heal on itself?
Nope. They haven't been touched. They haven't even got a point of damage on them.
Slow 6.
Nope.
Targeting everybody.
That's actually, that's too mean, even for me.
Maze on the remaining.
Nope. Nope.
All right, you got me.
Implosion.
Isn't that just another kill spell?
Kind of. Well, it
does a lot of damage.
It does 75 points.
It's not an automatic kill.
It's not, but it does 75 points of damage. It's only 2 spells
and then each round, when they sustain it, they will do 75
It moves to another person. It does another person. Yeah, well, okay. It's okay. It's fun, though. I mean, I have hard wilting, but this creature also has spell turning on them, so I'm waiting for them to cast their level 8 spell on this thing, and then it goes right back on them.
Now they know if they're watching this stream.
That's true. They do know, but I don't think they're watching. So, they got tons of stuff. I also like to... Look, I always say that. Like, if I want to kill you, I will kill you. It's simple as that. I'm not there to kill you. I'm there to torture you, Steve. I'm to slowly whittle away your hit points over time.
Even's here to torture you as the GM.
That's right.
He said it. He said it. Playing with him is torture.
If you're listening to this and you just heard that, let me just clarify here that I do not believe that should be your agenda when you're the game master. I believe your agenda as a game master should be to make the world exciting and fantastic, and to fill the characters' lives with adventure and danger. Okay.
Yes, but keep in mind that you're 100% right, except for except for this group of players. This is what they enjoy.
Them in particular,
they do. They're the ones that whenever I do more than 30 minutes of role playing, they're like, enough talk. They're like, stop. Where's the nearest dungeon? Let's go kill something. They are all about the fight. So people are like, wasn't us talking about remaster? We were talking about remaster. This is part of remaster. The remaster is that this is what is making the game so much fun, is moments like this, and that the game itself, everyone's worried about it changing and becoming 2.5, and I'm like, look, the game is evolving. It's evolving in multiple ways. The game is evolving that now it's going to be its own standalone thing, which I think is going to allow Paizo and Pathfinder to go in new and exciting directions. They are completely separated now from the OGL and WotC, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. And now, like, the game, they're going to clean it up. Everyone's complaining about the thing that was changed. What about so many other things that they're going to probably improve? I want to see that list when these books come out this, is it November? And everyone's like, this is what's awesome. Weren't people so excited that, druids can wear armor now? Like metal? I don't see anyone like going on about that, but it seemed pretty people like that they can now use metal.
That was always stupid anyways, because they could use metal weapons. It made no sense.
I know, but at least they officially fixed it.
It was very weird, and I don't even understand the Gygaxian place where it came from, and I'm so happy that it finally got removed.
Yeah, me too. I think that was...
It wasn't... And what about all the other ones? There's like rogues. I forgot all the big ones, like rogues.
Yeah. Dan, I don't know about this.
Yeah,
Dan says
Dan is pointing out that he wants to go back to the grab conversation.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about grab. What were the big changes with grab and
So Derik, you didn't
grab and
see
push.
that this existed, but grab, knockdown, and put the push abilities now roll athletics with no map instead of automatically succeeding, which allows them to critically
monster
succeed.
Abilities.
Yeah.
Yes.
It allows them to critically succeed potentially. So that in and of itself, I could tell, I thought, why every other change was made. So, for example, the cantrip change was not made intentionally to lower the damage. It was made because of getting rid of the ability
I know
modifier.
why.
I'm not sure what the goal of that change
I think
was.
I know why. I know
why.
why.
What do you think, Steven?
Because I use the grab a lot. And I use the push. Yeah. I use the push a lot, but I use grab constantly.
You mean the plus grab?
Yeah, the plus grab, plus push, and plus knockdown.
Not grab,
grapple.
Grab, like attack
grab,
and then
push,
grab.
And knockdown.
Yeah, the strike, and if you hit with that strike, if your next action is use grab, then they're immobilized. They're grappling.
Yes.
Or whatever.
I'd say 95% of the times I forget to apply the map.
Well, there is no check.
There is no map. Right now, it just automatically
It's automatic.
You don't roll a second check.
No, it's not. It says here, it's like if the monster's last action was a successful strike, the list grab on its damage, or the monster has a creature grabber restrained effect. If used after strike, the monster attempts to grapple the creature.
That's the new one.
Right.
That's the new one, Steven.
Right.
The original there was no check.
Yes, there was, but that was only for improved grab. There's no check.
No, that was for regular.
Improved grab was a free.
Oh, right. But it was a full action. Oh.
And it is still true. The grab is an action, and improved grab is a free action. But
so I'm going to guess that the reason why they did this is because obviously, number one, this affects monsters. I guess it also affects eidolons.
Sure. We talked about yesterday. I know exactly who it affects, but I couldn't figure out.
Here's why. My thought
process they want to affect
is players are probably feeling like they aren't getting to use their really good fortitude or really good reflex defense against this effect that should theoretically feel like it should be going against their fortitude or reflex defense. You're like, hey, I'm the really, really tough, strong, durable, high fortitude save fighter or whatever, and I got hit, and now I'm just automatically grappled. Like it feels like you're kind of shitting on my really good save. You're kind of like just doing an end around.
You know what? I think the problem is that they really need 3 versions of this. Is that because I use improved?
Won't be confusing.
No. I'll tell you. Give me a second, because improved grab I use constantly, and oh boy, I love improved grab, and boy, do the players hate that. But you almost need like regular or like weak grab, which would be this, where it's grab and then you roll.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah,
it's not weak grab. That's the thing. If it was definitely weak. Compared to the original grab, I would say, yeah, they're trying to nerf it. But it isn't. It's actually stronger in many cases. Because it's stronger in many cases because creatures with grab often have a very high athletic, sometimes even extreme.
Oh, I know.
And they can now restrain. Right. And the difference between restraining and grabbing is like ×5 more problematic. And here's another thing.
Yeah, that's actually true.
There's another change to it, which is that the action that lets you maintain the grabbed condition, this is the weirdest one to me, because I figured that they wouldn't do this. I figured they would say, okay, if you restrain them, when you maintain it, you goes down to grab. It actually stays at restrained forever, and they don't have to roll again. Yeah. So if it was altogether a power level decrease for grab, I would say, okay, I know what they're doing. They're trying to decrease the power level of grab. And so, Steven, I wouldn't be, I guess, I'm not confused. I see it.
Right.
I think that some things went up
No.
from it, some things went down from it.
Like
I don't think it's going to change the game a huge amount or anything. I don't think it's necessarily a problem in any way. I just also don't see what it was trying to solve in the same way that I see what everything else was trying to solve. And Derik, I think your theory, which is one of the 4 I was thinking of, is probably the most plausible, but I still don't buy it enough to be like, yes, this is what.
So by the way, Dalek Reject and Joseph Moore, you get the hero points for better improved grab with electrolytes and maximum over grab. Both very good movie references, and I always appreciate a good movie reference. So
maximum over grab's a good one.
That's good.
I was going to say, Michael Sayer has sort of hinted, right, that flails and hammers are going to get a save on the crit spec. On the knockdown,
which is great. They should.
And so what I'm saying is, it seems like no, I think they are. Those things are busted as hell. But what I'm saying is, it seems like they, as a holistic design change, are getting rid of situations where they kind of get to bypass one of your saves, right? And so the same way that the knockdown on the crit spec, like if you get crit from a brawling group or you get crit from a spear, I think, right? There's a save before you become clumsy or stunned or whatever, or slowed or whatever.
Spear has no save, but the ones that stun and slow have a save.
Okay.
And we've talked about that one before, Derik, but just basically what happened was that in the alpha, like very, very early on when we were first doing some of these things, nothing had a save. Nothing at all had a save. And that included frost runes. And I heavily used frost runes on my character, which did not have a save. And the other designers had to deal with the fact that was happening, which not only the timing of it caused serious problems, which caused us to change when slow and stun take away your actions, because at the time they didn't take away your actions at the start of your turn. They did it right then. So I was using reactions that then caused them to lose their actions, and we were like, what even happened? So not only did it fix that, but it also convinced everyone when I said all of these probably need a save. And they were like, well, the ones you were using with stun and slow need a save, but not trip. And I was like, well, sometimes trip is actually more powerful than stun and slow. They were like, but not always. Right. And so it was just like with Electric Arc and just like with Daze, it was on the edge. And I was like, yeah, that was a good point. I was like, yeah, you're right. It's not always. There's an edge you have to draw. The edge got drawn between those two.
All right.
And the edge moves to the place where now they're both going to have the save. And I think that's probably for the best.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you haven't lived until you've crit someone with a Warhammer or a Maul, and the Maul had, and you have critical specialization, and the Maul had Greater Crushing Rune on it, and it had Frost Rune on it, and they failed the slow save DC, and now they are prone, enfeebled, clumsy, slowed one. It's...
and hold on, they got hit by an arrow, so they have to spend an action to an athletics check to remove it.
At that point, GM, you can just take the monster off the battlefield. It's fine. There's no shame in that. You can just you can have it die honorably. And that's
actually literally had something similar to that happen when I was running War for the Crown, which was my first PF2 final game. Just like the fighter arrow thing at level 10, where you slow them if you hit. For 2 actions, then whenever the archer crit, at the very least that character was slowed 1 and had to spend an action to remove it. Yeah. And so somebody else would trip them and then move away or something like that. And it was like, okay, well, that's my next turn. And that was always hilarious.
Right. See, also critically failing on a slow spell. It's also pretty brutal. Anyways, so that is interesting. I think they probably, now to be clear, the downside of that is more die rolls, and I hate die rolls. I think there's too many die rolls in the game as it is. Now when I critically hit, it's like there might be 2 or 3 saves that have to be made, and if I'm before it was like, oh, the zombie comes over to you, it grabs at you. Okay, next round you're still in melee with the zombie. It grabs at you again. Oh, it hit. It grabs you. Cool. Automatic. Let's just move on. Let's keep going. Now it's like, oh, here's another die roll. And, the die rolls.
Listen, I get you. In fact, let's say that it was the way that the new remaster way, and then they switched it to the way that it was in the core rulebook, like the reverse, I would have a whole explanation for why that switch happened. Even though some things got stronger, some things got weaker, I think it may balance out in the end overall, except maybe the ability to restrain a spellcaster for a very long time if they can't escape. Most of the rest of it may sort of cancel out. But I could have given you a whole narrative about, like, look, okay, I know that there are several designers who like it when it's more elegant and there are fewer rolls and you can just go through more quickly. So they removed the roll from grab so that it would have fewer rolls at the table. Like, I could give you a whole explanation. That's why I can explain all of the other changes, is I know the design philosophies that are around, and I really respect those philosophies and understand where they come from, even when I don't always have exactly the same, and I often align with them, right? But this particular one, I'm not actually, I guess I'm not sure why. I have no problem with it. I just also can't say, like, what was the impetus if you assume there's some level of inertia by which you might as well keep it the same unless there's a really good reason to change it. I don't know what the really good reason was, and I'm open to hearing it because there maybe is one, but this is the only one that I can't see. I think that for the most part, it's just like, oh yeah, OGL name change, of course. Or like, yeah, quality of life increase. Or this makes it simpler, more elegant. I see that, things like that on every other change, but this, and even though this is, I think, less impactful than some of the other changes, and is not, I don't think it's a big deal. I just don't know why.
You know, and somebody said something, and I think they make a good point, but I think it's like, it's taking that and extrapolating it to the next level. Plaid Scientist said it's also one of those things where, say you're a root Leshy, which gives you +2 against shoves and trips. It feels better now that your +2 bonus is actually going to give you a benefit. And I think part of the reason for that is historically, the creatures that would have either thematically or even mechanically been inclined or incentivized to, say, trip you or grapple you had these abilities, which meant that the creatures that were most likely to want to use, say, grab or trip or shove had these alternative abilities that let them bypass the die roll, because the game designers, the monster designers, wanted the monster to be able to, you know, do the thing that the monster is supposed to do. But then you have these player abilities, which are supposed to give you this defense against those kind of abilities. And most of the time, not all the time, I understand, but most of the time, you know, the tentacled monster with a bunch of a bunch of tentacles, that's the monster that's going to be grabbing people and constricting them, because that's what it does. But it had improved grab. The creature that didn't have improved grab, where you would be able to get your root Leshy's +2 bonus against shoves, trips, grapples, or whatever, those monsters aren't probably grabbing that often or grappling or tripping that often. They're probably doing a lot of, you know, basic attacks or, you know, 2-action activity attack or something that's on their profile. So it's like the monsters that were supposed to, that you were kind of having that defense against, typically had this alternative ability that let you kind of shortcut it. So, yeah. By the way, people are saying that they're like, no, more me crapping on dice rolls. And they're like, what kind of a TTRPG player are you? And I'm the kind of TTRPG player that, as a GM, if a system has me rolling dice as the game master, I have to really think twice before I pony up to the screen. Wow. I'd rather play a game where, as the game master, I never had to roll a die ever.
You know what they call that?
What?
Sitting around the campfire telling stories.
Disagree.
Fair enough.
Disagree. Go watch our Root session 1. We played role-playing games for 3.5 hours. I did not roll dice once.
As I said. As I said, I back it up. Yes.
My players did, and there was a lot of really, really intense dice rolls, but as the GM, I did not have to roll them.
Really?
So like I said before, I do think that why is my person with +50 reflex tripping onto the ground is probably of the 4 or 5 reasons I can think of, is maybe one of the most plausible reasons. Like, I guess I'm just not sure about that being the reason. Like, maybe it is, but because of I guess maybe they'll say, maybe they won't, and it doesn't really matter, because I don't think it's going to make a huge change on a lot of different things. Sure, my summoner that I'm playing, who did take the trip one, if we decide to not just like sort of grandfather in that Eidolon feat, will now be worse off, because it's definitely a nerf for trip, because trip's critical success is not great.
D6 extra damage, I think.
Yeah, it's a D6 extra damage. It's not not impressive. I definitely would not prefer it, but the grapple it is.
By the way, it looks like they also removed the metal armor restriction in 5th edition in the latest playtest for druids as well.
See, everybody's getting rid of that weird.
Everyone's like, "Yo, they're doing it, we're doing it." Metal for everybody.
Everyone always assumes that when people do something similar, that it's a reaction to each other, and there's like almost no chance. It's like crabs and evolution.
Hey, it's like everything else. It's like was it the telephone where it's like Bell came to the patent office and like patented the telephone, and that very same day it was either one or two other people came in to also patent a phone. The same thing. It was, and they missed out. And that actually, there's a lot of stories of that, of like people going to the patent office with their patent, and the same day someone has the exact same idea for a patent.
Twigster, day one backer on Kickstarter. Buddy.
Hey, what about that game? I have that game, and I even ran sessions of it for was it Monty Cook, and it's okay. The world is interesting. The system's okay.
Yeah. Also, by the way,
though.
Steven,
yes.
you played Avatar Legends with me for 4 hours at Origins.
I know.
Did you see me roll dice once that
nope.
entire time?
Nope.
I did not roll dice.
Nope. I was just actually, I was trying to edge you on for that. Cause
I get it. Ooh, you know what? Kevin has a great question. Is there a name change that you guys will miss the most? That's a great question.
Yes.
So what old name
will you
miss
100%. I already know what it is. I don't even need
to. Is it Magic Missile, Steven?
No.
Mine might be Magic Missile. As boring as that might sound.
Because I'm going to keep calling it Magic Missile to the day I die, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, but that's cheating.
You always have such a
so much that you refuse to change it.
You always have such a cop-out answer.
No, my cop-out, that's not my answer.
All right.
My cop-out answer is my biggest problem of all the names. You're never going to guess it, but it's it is. What do they call it? I'm looking at the list because I'm trying to see what they called it instead.
Do we only know the names of the new spells?
We only know the ones that they changed from Rage of Elements.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know those.
And we have a few that we can figure out because like the mentalism school.
Oh, here it is. There's the one that I don't like. City of Brass. I hated they changed that. I love the City of Brass.
It's now Medina Mudhaya.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Because also, I ran a City of Brass Magic the Gathering deck, and I used to call it the City of Pain. The deck of pain, because I used to have Aaron Afeats in it, which do a point of damage to. I had Curd Apes, and I had City of Brass. So I would average about 11 points of damage to myself, but the deck was so fast that I would kill you before you got anything out.
Do you think that did they change Fireball?
Not that we know of. I have no idea.
I think that they didn't because we saw.
I don't think they're changing. I think
still had Fireball.
Right.
I think
which is also why I thought they could have. If they keep portmanteaus like Fireball, they probably could have kept Stone Skin, but they changed it. But I like the new name.
I think Fireball and like Lightning Bolt are so generic and used in so many other things. I think, believe it or not, that things like Magic the Gathering and other games that use those terminology save them because they're like, look, there's enough use of that in common gaming terms that it cannot be seen as owned by them. And Lightning Bolt.
I'm also pretty sure that the City of Brass is actually just a legendary thing that is not owned by Wizards as well.
Right. That's why I'm like, why do they even need to change it? That's what actually, it bothers me that they changed it. And I don't like the new name. And it bothers me that why did they? Because that shouldn't need to be changed. So what I was saying is like Fireball and Lightning Bolt are so nebulous and just some of the most popular spells of Magic. It's like, it's going to be hard for them to argue WotC saying that, oh, that's a D&D only term. It's like, no, it's not. It's in many other games. So you cannot own that.
Yeah, it's weird.
But they could be like, we also own Magic.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter because they didn't. When it was created, it was own. Not true because at the
time it was created. They
correct.
They're
right. Yeah. So
it's
can't.
It's weird to me that like Magic Missile had to become Force Barrage and Mage Armor had to become Mystic Armor, but Fire Shield is Fire Shield.
I mean, mage armor, they might have changed to mystic armor because they wanted to give to more traditions. Because mage made it sound more like it was like a wizard.
But what are your guys? So that's my least favorite one. What are you? What were your favorite?
You know what? You're right, Steven. The new this mystic armor has all 4 traditions.
Wait, Steven didn't say that. That was me.
Oh, sorry, Mark said that. Yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay, Steven said it now.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Right, yeah,
no, wait. I have
yeah.
one that actually is my favorite change, though. I'll go the opposite.
The cuisine one. Do you like that one better?
I actually do like that one. No, like what I do love, and I think everyone's gonna like the same thing. Spell ranks instead of spell level.
Well, spell ranks is so much better.
Oh, thank God.
Cuisine, I thought you would like that better.
I love that. I love that one. But spell ranks, everything is level. Everything this is level, and we have had so many arguments with my friends, and not bad arguments, just confusement arguments. Because wait, is it level 3 spell, but I'm a level 5 cat? It's like, oh my God, why is everything level? It's so confusing.
Having something that went from 1 to 10 and was not called level. That was something like I don't remember if it got into the beta playtest. I think maybe it did, but there was like at one point in time where there was basically a thing that was like a rank that went up to 10. And like afflictions were on that scale instead of being on 1 to 20 scale. Certain things were on that scale, and it would have just been cool to have there be a rank scale that was at half and another scale that was all the way to 20 that was called level, and they were not always called level. But
I'll tell you,
the relevant Order of the Stick comic posted link.
Yeah, with all the levels.
Yes.
So I guess I didn't give one. I really just like the name changes overall. So it's difficult for me to come up with one. So I'll just say I didn't really have any that I disliked or was like, I'm so sad that we're losing the previous name. But the only one that I was kind of more like lukewarm towards, a lot of cases I was just like, this is better. I like cleanse cuisine. It's just better. Just like I changed the hold person spell to paralyze during PF2 in general because I just thought that hold person was not a good name. Some of the original names aren't. The one that I'm somewhat lukewarm towards is Dawn Silver instead of Mithril. I guess I
didn't see that.
It's all about our feelings. My feeling is that Mithril was pretty generic, and if anything, Tolkien has it, and not Dungeons and Dragons. And
right. But
it
maybe
just sort of shows up in so many fantasy stories and games that are everywhere. Whereas Dawn Silver is just kind of a portmanteau word. But even then, I don't dislike Dawn Silver. I'm just a little lukewarm about it. Whereas I generally find most of the changes to be like, I think this is better than the name that it was before.
Yeah, I mean, overall, again, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to have in November. I'm interested to see what they do with the classes. I mean, look, I mean, if you liked what they've made so far, again, I think that, the classes that have been coming out, the Psychic, the Thaumaturge, the Kineticist are, extremely cool. And, I'd love that they're getting an opportunity to maybe go back and put a new coat of paint on maybe some of the classes.
There's a lot of more experience with the system.
Yeah.
And there are things that just evolved throughout the time that the system was being built. Like, for example, when the Swashbuckler came out, right? It had extremely high ratings on the surveys, but I saw things that a few people mentioned about like adding built-in skill progression. And I was like, maybe we can have built-in skill progression. The thoughts were that overall, that wasn't like one of the questions on the survey. Most people said don't change it in the survey, that they liked it. So there wasn't really a lot of momentum to put that in there because it's like, well, why would you break something that is the most highly rated thing we've ever had on a survey? Like, so then in Inventor, though, I still remembered that from Swashbuckler, and I was designing it with crafting built in. But then the thought was like, well, Swashbuckler and some others didn't get it. So the playtest went out without crafting. But we tested it without it, but I put a question on the survey asking about it. It was completely a blowout that the people on the survey wanted to have crafting built in. It was mentioned so many times. So we put it into the final Inventor. the vendor being my next class, right? That was like I did summoner in between there, but it was my next one that happened to care about skills. So that way, when I designed the thaumaturge, we already knew how people felt about skills getting in. The design team was already on board, so I could just build in that they had built-in skill increases to the magic skills from the beginning, and we didn't have to like test it and do a survey. That was something that was learned, that was picked up by the team along the way. And something, a lot of things are shared. You know, I'm not there anymore, but everyone was there while we were learning it. And so those are the kind of insights that the team, from having the game out for so long, can use when they go back in with the remaster to put some really cool and interesting takes on what's come before.
By the way, before you go, I'm going to say I do appreciate alliteration. They got a lot of alliteration in here. They got like blazing bolt and cleansed cuisine and environmental endurance. That's the Marvel way. Remember that? That's like you always.
Peter Parker, Stephen Strange, Reed Richards.
Well, he did it on purpose. Fing Fang Foom. It's like every single one of those characters. He did it because it worked, and it's actually a good trick. It's a good trick to have it because it's easier for you. It's like a mnemonic technique to remember those. So
I see in chat somebody's talking about like, you know, why does the kineticist seem so cool, and why does the kineticist seem so powerful? I don't know if you had a chance to watch it, but Ronald, Rules Lawyer, did a really great video where he obviously must be a huge Avatar fan.
As are many of us.
Children bending, not big blue-skinned alien people.
Right.
I'm a big skinned blue alien person, right. Avatar.
So he put together a really cool video where he had Team Avatar from Avatar: The Last Airbender fighting Azula, and he made Azula, I think, as like a level 11 fire kineticist, and then he had Team Avatar. He had level 8 Aang, air, obviously, Katara, water, Toph, earth, and Zuko as fire, and they were all level 8. But he also included Sokka as a level 7, so one level lower, level 7 fighter. And somebody from our Patreon did the math and said, you know that Sokka still did the most damage in that fight.
He threw a giant boomerang at everybody.
He double sliced. He had double slice.
There you go.
I just thought it was really funny that the fighter, who is not a bender, not a kineticist, who is a level lower than the other 4 members of his party, who were all one level higher than him, still did the most damage.
I think kineticist is really cool design because it had tons of pages to put in lots of options. That's excellent. You're going to be able to get a better class usually that way. And it just has lots of cool, flexible action spends so that it's super complex to be able to decide what things to do in a way that I love, where I always would, if I haven't played one yet, but if I do, I'll always have like 4 or 5 things that I can be doing at any given moment. I probably would not want to put it on like a beginner player unless I heavily curated all of their choices for them as the GM, which is not something I like to do. But for someone like me, the class is just delightful.
It's not horrible because, I mean, like at level 1, right, you might only have like 2 or 3 impulses. So there's only like a couple of things that you can do with your air or your element. And so there's a sense of it just sort of kind of naturally building. Which is cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. The video did a great job of showcasing how cool the characters were. They were very dynamic. It was very exciting. It felt, very much like, kind of a cartoon animated, fight with people running up walls and, very over the top, very, dare I say, anime-esque. But some
people in the chat are saying that they've seen a lot of videos that have like the clickbait title to talk about it being strong with like some very high amount of damage. Look, there's a few things on there which are not direct damage. They're usually like something that's on the ground, and based on how you interpret 4 things on the ground, you get hit by all 4 of them every time you walk in a square, because your gargantuan creature takes 64 ticks of damage every time it walks, because it has in 3D 64 ticks that need to be adjudicated. Like there's a few edge case things. They're never the direct damage things. But I think we could ignore those because who knows what that, they're likely probably to get errata or clarification of some kind. And when you look at the direct damage routines that are on them, I feel like the ones I've looked at, I've not looked at all of them, but every time I map them out, I'm like, this seems pretty reasonable. Like, it does a good amount of damage, and it's not going to out damage everybody else in the world who's made themselves a focused build. And it's also going to be able to handle area. It has a backup ranged attack that you can do. And I think it seems like the direct damage stuff, at least, is very, very well done. And there's lots of cool options in there that aren't just direct damage that you can take.
Yeah. Again, I'm excited. I know. So in our last game of Abomination Vaults, Bob Dwarf Barbarian died, and he's sworn off the Barbarian. He says, "I'm over it. I'm done with it." He's like, "I'm not playing any more Barbarians." I think it was like his third Pathfinder 2nd Edition Barbarian, and he was going to make a fighter, but I think he's going to make a kineticist now. So
that makes sense.
We shall see how it goes.
I thought he's like all he plays is fighters.
Oh yeah, but he's not even fighting barbarians. He's just, he's a Hulk. He's a Hulk smash guy. But he kept getting so frustrated because he would rage, and then like round 2 or 3 of the combat, there'd be something else that he would, want to go do, and someone would be like, "Oh, well, that's a concentrate," and he'd be like, "Damn it!"
He should take Moment of Clarity.
Moment of Clarity should be free action. It should not take an
Why
action.
don't you make it a free action in your game? You're in charge of the
Derik,
game.
You said at the beginning,
It's your game. You can do whatever you want. Why are you being a bad DM? Huh?
You're talking to someone who got rid of the aid roll for aiding people.
You're a bad GM, man.
If somebody took it, I would change it. Actually, in that game that he died with his Barbarian, I gave the Barbarian twice their level plus their con modifier in hit points, temporary hit points when raging, not level plus con. So I already did change something to make the Barbarian a little bit more beefy, a little more tanky.
I'm making a homebrewed feat for a Barbarian archetype player in my game, because she wants to be a dragon who's in human form, and then with a caster who took Barbarian archetype, which is not even a strong combo, but just the idea is that she enters dragon form and rage and then attacks. And so I said, okay, I'll make a feat for you that's in the Barbarian archetype that requires dragon, and that lets you change shape as you you rage and you change to your dragon shape as one action, because I see no reason that that's particularly powerful. You could have been the dragon the whole time, other than that was your vision of your character. So I'm just going to let you do it all without having to spend extra actions to do it.
Right. And if I design that, I would say, and also when you rage and turn into a dragon, you can also breathe a bunch of fire for free, because I would be like, that sounds cool.
Your game, you can do whatever you want, baby.
Yeah,
my game.
Derik,
my
can
world.
For one action, you get those 4 actions worth of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Maybe, and you get to sudden charge at the end of it. It'll be awesome.
It's your game, man. Whatever you want. Players will love you. I'll be like, Derik's games are great. The fights last for 1 round, and we always win.
I am looking forward to playing some games at Gen Con. I'm going to try to demo a bunch of games, try a bunch of new games out. We've got some patrons from Night's Last Call coming. And I know a bunch of people are signed up for a bunch of different games. One person I think is playing in 7 or 8 different Pathfinder Society events, and he's super stoked. I don't think maybe it's his only 2nd Gen Con, so he's really, really pumped for it. It'll be a really fun experience. I haven't been since 2019 because of the COVID, and then difficulties getting a room. And
I haven't been since 2022.
Well,
that's been a long time.
That was last
year. A whole
year, Steve. It's been a year. It's a long time.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to it, because like I said, I haven't.
It's gonna be it is gonna be oof. There's let's look at I'm looking at to see who's going. You're going, Jess is going, DM's Lair's going, Baron Professor
going,
Baron's
Dungeon
going,
Masterpiece is going, everybody's going except me.
Let's see, who else is going? I'm just looking at this whole list here.
Hopefully.
My friend John is going, Bob's going.
Are they going, or are they going? like I'm going to Gen Con, or are they like, where I'm there, I'm promoting something. I have a
no.
book,
Half of them never been to Gen Con before in their lives. They're going to have fun. Yeah, they're having to have fun.
I was actually doing this math the other day. I said my first Gen Con was in 2021, so counting the 2001. It was in 2001. So I was like, so I should have been in theory to 22 Gen Cons, but I missed 3 of them. So I thought this was going to be my 20th Gen Con, but it's actually my 19th.
I missed one, and after that, I was so angry that this was a long time ago, like 2008 or something. Is that we would always plan our vacations during the summer. I mean, I have a vacation a little after Gen Con, and it was just the timing that we were going to Hershey with my kids in the Jersey Shore when they were really little during Gen Con. And I was like, I'm not missing Gen Con. I'm going to I went in on a Wednesday, stayed all day Thursday, and then left like first thing Friday morning and didn't sleep the whole time. And then I literally got like picked up from the airport, and then we started to drive to Hershey. So I was like, if I have to go for one day, I'll go for one day. And I did.
Just so you can check the box.
Well, because you know what? It's actually one of my most memorable Gen Cons, because that's when I was really into Magic, and I was playing Magic at like 3 a.m. And there were games, man. People were playing. I was doing drafts at 3 a.m. It was crazy. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Well, especially in the days before like Arena, where you could just play Magic on your phone.
No, this is what I did. Not only that, I played a Magic, and then I was so tired, and then I slept for like 2 hours, and then I got up, and I had just enough time before my flight Friday morning to play another game. So I played a real quick game of draft, and 3 games. I won, and then they gave me my packs. I think they give you 8. And then after I won, I was just like, because I was about to go, I was like, I don't need this here. And I gave it to the guy I played. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm going. I'm flying out here. And he was so appreciative. He's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I was like, all right, no problem.
that is amazing.
Really? I think it was that amazing, but it was fun. It's memorable for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that's what Gen Con's about. Like, somebody being like, oh man, this one time I was playing this guy and he just gave me all his cards and it was crazy. And it's like, I loved it. It's like, yeah, like, I don't know. I love that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you the other one, this is similar, but more depressing, is that, I was at, what was I at? Gamma. And there were, I don't know if I should tell this story. This is what Chech Games, Legends of Azul, or whatever the name of that board game is. It's like the one where you're treasure hunting. It's like $100 board game. And they were demoing it. And I mean, it's a big...
Are they also the ones who did Codenames?
I think so. They're a big company. They're like one of the bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, Codenames is like one of the top party games.
So this was like one of those big box Euro games. And they're demoing it, and then the con was ending, and the guy's like, "Oh, do you want it?" I'm like, "Oh, why?" It's like you're just giving out the game. It goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, what are you gonna do with it if you don't give it to me?" It's like, "Throw it out." I'm like, "You're throwing out $100 board game?" They're like, "We do it all the time." I was like, "Oh, sacrilege!" I was like, "Oh my God!" But I couldn't fit it in my bag because it was way too big. But someone else took it. I was like, "Oh my God, that's depressing that they throw it out." Like I mean, I know people want to get rid of their inventory before they fly back to wherever they're going, but I didn't think they went to those extremes of like throwing out their own games. But oh well, I guess they do.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's wild how expensive it is to move stuff.
Oh, I know it is.
Compared to buy it. And that hit me when like people can see now that for a little while I've been not in my apartment in Redmond because we moved to an interstitial location and are trying to look for a house eventually, right? But it turned out that because of the way things worked out and we had to get things with cubes instead of like by footage within a big truck to move it, that it would have pushed us over a cube to take any more than we took. And so like it was much cheaper to throw away pretty much all of our furniture, which was from IKEA, like it wasn't expensive furniture, and buy it again than it was to just bring it over. Even if you ignore the labor of packing and any of those other things, just like the pure price of getting it in the truck from one location to the other was higher, and it made like the part of me that wants to like conserve resources like
die
like
inside.
Nails on a chalkboard to that.
Yeah, that'd be horrible.
Yeah, I have when my wife and I first met and we had separate apartments and then we moved in together, she decided to put her stuff in storage because she didn't want to get rid of it. And of course, it was literally Lucite furniture. Remember that from the 80s, Lucite? And after having it in storage for like 2 years, we realized it costs more to keep it in storage than it did to just buy new freaking furniture. And so we're like, why are we having this furniture in storage again? And then eventually, of course, we got rid of it. And here's the best part. We call up like the Goodwill and everything and Salvation Army, and they're like, oh, we'll take anything you got except Lucite. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, we don't take Lucite furniture. There's actually a long list of things they don't take. And they're like, A, it's heavy as hell. B, it's very breakable. And C, no one wants it. And I was like, oh. So we couldn't even get rid of it. It was like, wow, this furniture we spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars to keep, we can't even get rid of now.
Oh, yeah.
So.
The furniture we got rid of, we had to pay to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had to pay not a lot, but some amount of money to get rid of it. But the cost of paying to get rid of it plus buying the new furniture was still significantly less than the cost of just moving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned that lesson. Now we like never keep anything unless we absolutely have to. Or big things like that. Let me rephrase that.
So let's see. What about critical takes on the remaster preview? Did we cover some of the main?
I
think we covered it.
We covered it all. We're done.
I think we did.
Yes.
I really do.
So, there's big news.
I mean, there's a couple of minor things like, it looks like I like that they got rid of the skill requirement for talismans. I actually really, really like that change. I think that makes talismans a much more compelling.
It makes them much easier to use. There were some minor nerfs to a few of them but they're only like situationally nerfs, and that like their activation became one action that gives you the action you take instead of being a free action during the action you take, which makes it harder to use them with activities. Like for the one about escaping, you can't use it with Liberator, giving you a liberating their reaction because you have to use the actual action itself. But I think that it makes it broader for how many people can use it. Because the issue with getting talismans in an AP, I say as one of the people who worked on talismans in the core rulebook, so like we were all very culpable of this. Like the design goal was like, well, scrolls require spellcasting, so what if there were things that required skills and feats? That's where it started.
Yeah.
But I think it had more potential as just moving past that like it did now. The problem is in AP you get this and nobody has expert in that skill.
Right.
Even if they wanted to use it. And so then they're like, we have to sell it. We literally have to. Nobody's going to become an expert in acrobatics in our party, and we know that.
Right. I actually like, too, that they introduced a greater potency crystal. It's a little expensive for what it does, but it's cool that if you're a martial character, you have access to, hey, I just need a better, I want that extra weapon damage die, or I want that extra bonus to attack roll for 1 round. I'm willing to spend a couple, of my hard-earned gold pieces on that. So I think that's pretty cool. We'll see how that goes forward.
Yeah, someone said that the regular potency crystal was strengthened. Was it? I think it's exactly the same.
Is it a level? It's still a level 1 item. It's a free action. You make an attack roll with the fixed weapon, but you haven't rolled yet.
It has the same
+1 striking until the end of the turn. It's the same, as far as I can tell. It's the same wording.
The price is the same. I don't think they're right that it changed. I think it. Maybe I missed something.
Yeah.
So wait, are you going to do a stream, Derik, and
from Gen Con?
Yes.
I am not planning on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I might.
Like I said, if I do a stream from Gen Con, it's going to be like from my phone, like real super casual, just like, hey, everybody, quick 20, 30 minutes, like, hanging out and telling you what, hey, I've been here for 2 days. Here are the cool games I've played, and like being really like excited about it. But no, I'm not schlepping all of my my camera gear and my audio gear and all that other stuff. Like I said, I'm going as a civilian. I'm gonna go for to demo games and attend a couple seminars and maybe try to drop into a couple of pickup games and get an opportunity to hang out and meet some patrons who I haven't met before. So again, if you're in Gen Con and I'm there and you want to say hi, feel free to say hi. You can tell me how wrong you think I am to my face. It'd be great.
I do it every week.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think you're wrong on a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm wrong sometimes. It's actually really good. I had a patron today. I gave him a hero point for it because it was really, really funny. He we were talking about this stream, and he said about RFC, and he said he's like, actually, amazingly, I came to Knights of Last Call from Roll for Combat, and I originally thought Derik was kind of an annoying know-it-all jackass contrarian, because that's the dynamic he falls into when he's a guest on Roll for Combat. And then I actually started watching his streams, and I realized, oh, no, he's definitely a know-it-all jackass contrarian.
That was not going the way I thought it was. I thought you were going to say, no, but Steve is, and you're the normal person. I was like, no, oh, okay.
And he said, he goes, but he's not as annoying when he's by himself. I said, when he's not there just trying to provide counterpoints, answers to the RC guys, and can he actually use his power for good? But anyways, this is a person who joined our Patreon, so obviously
he says that you used your power for good.
Your power for good.
I don't know. I think that I think it's fun to have multiple different takes on the same stream and to see different points of view. I've been mentioning this a few times to people, but like as a game designer, I think it's really important to look at everything through multiple different lenses, and that includes the perspectives of others instead of just ourselves and what we like the best in certain game design and products. That's something I definitely learned a lot from working at Paizo, compared to like the skills I developed before working at Paizo were more focused around like the kinds of things my group liked, which were not what every group liked. And so I like hearing your different takes, Derik, even if I don't agree with them sometimes, and like occasionally find them inflammatory, but usually not. Usually I'm just like, this is thought provoking, even if I don't agree with it. And you and I agree sometimes on things that you expected not to agree with me on, and then you're like, oh, Mark actually agrees with me on that.
Yeah, you're always. It's very hard to get a read, Mark, on where you're gonna land. Sometimes I think I've got you figured out, and then you throw me a curve.
Just too squirrely.
Yes.
Really?
Too squirrel lashy.
Yeah, there you go.
What games are you bringing with you? What are we playing?
I don't know.
I gave you the list. I gave you a whole list.
Yeah, I don't have Mothership. So
all right. What about the other one I gave you? I gave you a few.
Yeah, I have Forbidden Lands. I don't know. I'm probably gonna bring just like micro games, because like as much as I had fun playing Avatar, like that's not Boo. Like as much as I had fun playing Avatar, like sitting down and doing a 90-minute teach for a role-playing game before we play for 3 or 4 hours, it's a big ask. So like I would much rather play a game like, I don't know, like Honey Heist or Lady Blackbird or something like that. That literally is, the rules can fit on a half sheet of paper folded. So makes it just much more gaming, less rules explaining. Plus, quite frankly, by like day 3 of that, I was so exhausted of explaining, because every time we would all sit down, we're playing a new game, and I was like, okay, I got to teach another game. Okay, I got to teach another.
To teach games.
It's your own fault for bringing so many new games to people.
It's so fun to teach games. I thought that most people who were are into indie RPGs also really enjoy teaching games.
Yes
and
no.
If you like running them. Yes and no?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just getting old, and I just don't have the patience.
Fair enough.
to do it.
You know what? You still have the game agility to play a lot of different games, though.
Sure. Yeah. This is kind of an off-topic thing, but like my main issue is I can teach games to people, But what I really struggle to do is because like I go, this game is more than just the rules. It's the philosophy. It's the application of those rules. It's a different tone. It's a different style. It's a different way of even approaching this game. You can't just take the mechanics and apply them in the same way that you are traditionally used to applying them, aka in maybe like a D20, framework system. And that teaching that part is what really kind of drains me. Like teaching you, oh, this is how the rules work. It's one thing, but like the sort of softer skills, I guess you would call them, of the game, the sort of the ways that the agendas and the principles and the reward and the mechanics push the game in a different direction than what you might be traditionally used to in, say, a D20 fantasy. That can be very tiresome to teach to people.
No, that's fair. If you don't let that happen emergently, sometimes it can make the game less fun, and that can be tricky. I like teaching the rules of games, but conversely, maybe paradoxically, I do not like to be taught the rules of games. I want to read the manual myself because I find it highly instructive. And some people will be like, no, listen, this manual is terrible. It's bad. Let me teach it to you. It's well known online. Everyone says it's bad. I'm like, I really want to read it now. I need to read this manual if it's that bad, because I want to know why it's bad. I want to try to think about why they made something that was that bad. How it got to be that way, where the shortfalls are, where people are not connecting correctly to the rules, and think about it that way. Plus, there's also like there's a decent chance, like you roll your flat check, there's a decent chance that when I do that, there was like some rule that everybody who did not know it was in there and they just did not know that. Like I've had it before where like there was some game that was about bamboo, and
Takanono.
Yeah, it was probably that.
Yeah,
because it has take, which means bamboo. But so like I was told like we've learned that you just never do this one kind of thing in the game because it's very resource inefficient. And I was like, okay. And so I read the instructions. I was like, oh, by the way, you could do this other thing that you, and they were like, wait, no, you can't, can you? I showed them in the instructions, like, oh, well, now that thing that we never did, they had created a meta around missing one of the small things that you could do that created a situation that was kind of a prisoner's dilemma around certain types of expansion in that game that they just then never did. And so I find it useful just as a game designer to explore the design of other people's games, good or bad, and figure out what's going on.
So what you're really saying isn't that you want to read it, it's that you don't trust other people to have read it correctly.
Well, that's a side effect, is that they might have read it wrong, but I want to read it because I want to learn about the game design is the primary reason. I'd say the tertiary reason is sometimes they miss something, but primary is I'm fascinated by how they explain the rules, especially if it's one that people think doesn't do a good job, so I can avoid the pitfall. Secondary is that I don't want to get a partial explanation. Like if the game has a card deck that I'm going to need to draw from at certain point, I want to know like what the general distribution of things that are in that deck is. And I want to know things to a greater degree than what anybody is going to reasonably give me in their spiel of the game. And then tertiary is they might have had something wrong, but like that happened more than I expected because it's not my expectation or my main reason for doing it.
All right. I think we've gone long enough, and I'm hungry.
I think so.
I think so.
We made it through.
I look forward to seeing you, hanging out with you next week, Stephen.
Yes, it'll be a lot of fun, and go eat and play games, and
yes,
more games.
Maybe you can convince me to go to St. Elmo's with you.
Well,
I think that he already has people to sit at St. Elmo's with him. The one time he got a reservation.
I was saying that I did not want to go back, not because it's bad, but just because it's I've been there and the shrimp cocktail is way too hot.
Oh, really? Well, you know what? So what we can do is what I often do is you just sit at the bar like late at night because they're open really late, and I'll go at like 10, 11, 12 at night.
I was a little disappointed. I saw the food trucks are only going to like 10 p.m., so that's pretty early, relatively speaking, from Gen Con.
You're
Steven doesn't care when the food.
I don't care about the food. Food trucks are.
I like food trucks.
Yeah, well, I like food trucks too, but not those food trucks because I think they're a scam. But
I mean, it's Gen Con. Everything's a scam.
No. It's not everything's a scam. No.
Sean, aka Mike Tarabasco or whatever, in chat with the super chat says, "Let's get a game of Fiasco."
Oh my god, that is all we need to. That was. I forgot about that. That was the most debaucherous. God, if we filmed that, did you actually ever see the film finally of Smith?
No.
What? It's on your phone.
I know. I never went. I was so busy. I just never. I saw until right now. I forgot that you had sent that to me. But here's the thing. I mean, on Tuesday for our
game would not stop.
He came dressed up as in a raccoon onesie.
So you see, like we were talking about that. He did it.
He's definitely.
By
the way, speak of raccoon onesie, Mr. Aaron Smith himself. There he is in chat with a Roll for Combat super fan for 5 months.
Fiasco. That game you missed it because you were so drunk. You missed the craziest game. That's legendary now. Yeah, that game was so. Oh my god, the debauchery in that game was. I've never seen something so. I've never played a game that was that dirty in my life ever.
You know what, Steven? You're like the little kid who went and saw his first rated R movie.
No,
guys, you can't believe it.
Because everyone was on the same. Because there was how many of us? 6 of us, and the stories were so intertwined. Remember, there was only two outcomes that could have had what was his name? Mike
Tabuno.
Mike Tabuno. And of all the stories, one is you want to hook up with Mike Tabuno, and the other one's I want to kill Mike Tabuno, and we got both of them. And that is what caused a tsunami of insanity because of those.
Yeah. It's like Jason Morningstar knew what he was doing when he wrote Fiasco.
I know, but those are the only 2 outcomes of. He's only in there twice, and that's it. And we got both of them, and then also it was just the way the roles were working. I think I always succeeded in every role, and then Sean I think failed in every single thing he did, which also helped. It was
well. We shall see. Either way, I look forward to getting a chance to hang out with you and get a chance to meet maybe some of the other people. It'd be nice to meet Jess. Put a name to a face, as I say. It'll be fun. So,
Mike Tabuno, he died a horrible death. I did the. Oh no, there was a twin. Oh, then there was a twin brother too. He had a twin brother, and then at the end we were like the dun dun dun. Who really died? Was it him or his twin brother? And it was a whole. That was a crazy game. I wish we had recording of that. I have a few minutes, and that's more than enough. You have to watch it right after this. Promise me you watch it because it's Smith playing the mother.
I've seen it before.
I know, but you've seen it before, but it was very funny just because I didn't expect it. Yes. To you, maybe it's old hat, but to me, it was very funny.
I'm sure I will enjoy it, but
yes, I think you would still enjoy it.
That's why I said it. It's like for me, I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds like a pretty. Relatively, it sounds like a good game of Fiasco, and you're like, it was supposed to, and I was like, yeah, that's par for the course.
Well, because our games never go that far, because everyone will hold back a little bit, right. And this is one of those rare games where everyone was pushing each other as hard as they could.
Yeah,
there was no oh, you think you could go that far? I'm gonna go this far, and no one backed out. It just kept going
because they were all nice last call Patreon members.
That could be.
We go hard in the paint. What can I tell you?
That was. Well, so I don't play games like that. That's the other thing.
True.
I play. All my guys are into fighting. They're not into. I don't think they'd like it. That's the other thing. My regular group doesn't like to play games like that. So
I got to go grab those books right there, and go play me some Pathfinder 2. I got Abomination Bolts to go to.
Oh, okay. I got.
Awesome. Enjoy your Abomination.
I got nothing to do.
We're actually going to be pushing the system here a little bit, Mark. Although. It's beautiful how it works out. So we only have 3 people in this campaign because it's a secondary adventure. Now we had played Abomination Vaults, the first adventure, which is 1 through 4. So we kind of like picked it back up again after like we took it off for about a year. And like we kind of retconned some of the characters a little bit, you know, because some people wanted to play the same character, but maybe make a couple tweaks, whatever. I said, but we only have 3 people. So they're on level 5 of the Abomination Vaults, made for parties of level 5, but there's only 3 of them. So I made them level 6. And actually the math works out beautifully that it like a moderate for 3 level 6s is pretty much the same as a moderate for 4 level 5s.
Yeah, but it works mostly, but there's some advice in the core rulebook that says, keep in mind you could have lost some party rolls that you would have had with 4. And when one PC gets knocked out, you lose a higher percentage of all PC things, so it's swingier. So it's like keep that in mind. Well,
and that's what I said. That's what I told my my players tonight. We thought we were going to be playing tonight, but then one of the people was also out. So now there's 2 people, and we said, but they leveled, and they're still on level 5, but now they're level 7. And I said, well, the math works out that 2 PCs of level 7 is equivalent to 4 PCs of level 5.
Yeah, but that's where the core rulebook says that you really are dicey on that.
I know, but I told him, I said, but remember, this is going to be much higher variability, because while the monsters are going to need really high dice rolls to hit you, if they get a lucky streak and get a couple hits in, you might go down, and then that's 50% of the party going unconscious. And everyone's like, and the 2 guys were like, yeah, that sounds fine. So tonight it's going to be a level 7 sorcerer and a level 7 rogue versus the forces of.
Oh no, that's also just really not a good pair to be the 2 that stayed. If
I know,
because the rogue doesn't have a second person.
So, well, we were talking about that. We're like, maybe.
Oh no.
Well, we're like, he's like, I have a pretty good armor class. He's like, and I can, make sure I'm casting my shield spells. And he goes, and maybe I'll pick up a shield, like a normal shield, just to help you flank him. I said, or you could, maybe finally have a reason to cast summon spells, just to have something that the rogue could flank with. But anyways,
yeah, and I mean, if the
we'll
enemy
see how it works out.
If the enemies spend the actions to kill the summon spell, then that is a lot of action they've spent, especially since, they're level 7. So, like, the hardest thing that they can fight if they're in a place that's meant for level 5s is level 8.
Right.
That's if it was a solo. Okay, I know Abomination Vault sometimes has extreme things that you can find, but, like, probably most things will be below level 8.
Right. No.
And so that means that it'll take those things multiple actions to get rid of some of the summons.
Right. And that's what I was saying, like, against like a level 6 or 7 monster, they'll probably make quick, short work of a summon. But, if you fight a group of, say, level 4 monsters,
like 4 level 4s, very iconic, severe encounter.
That would be a severe encounter. Yeah. But
your summon is like about that level.
Yeah, your summons usually is level 3 if you're casting it. So
it's about that level. It's only 1 level lower.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a different play experience, but we've been having fun sort of pushing the boundaries of the Pathfinder 2 math. And actually we really like the third person when he's there was Bob, who was a barbarian who is now dead and was going to make a fighter, but now might make a kineticist. He can't make it tonight because he's down in Columbus, but we've been really enjoying playing three person Pathfinder 2. It's like, well, obviously it's a lot quicker. Things get around to your turn really quick. And the PCs being 1 level higher than expected, it still feels balanced because there's only 3 of them instead of 4. But boy, it's like, you hit that much more often, you crit that much more often. It feels a little bit more heroic, It
works pretty well. They are like the party is just always a little more tenuous, so they're a little less able to deal with most things just because of the sheer numbers than with 4, but it's pretty close. And I think, like, we tried to create an encounter balancing system and party balancing system that was that stable that you could do that as much as possible. I think we hit the mark with that, even though it's not literally perfect.
Would you say you hit the arcane mark?
Maybe, or the sigil.
All right. Enough of that. All right, I'm going. Go play your game. I'm gonna go play Pikmin 4 and try to finish up
and not play Baldur's Gate 3 because it's
not out yet.
Gen Con.
Not out yet. It's also not out. I can't play it because it's not out. Once it comes out, I'll be playing it. I got to clear my schedule. That too. I have to clear my whole schedule because that's a 500-hour game. So I got to make sure I got the time and the energy. And
I'll just write Eldamon while you're
you better
playing Baldur's Gate 3.
It better be done when I come back.
Aaron's wife when they were planning their wedding years ago, deliberately set the date of the wedding for November 11th, 2011, because she knew that her husband, our friend Aaron, would never remember their wedding anniversary, but he would remember the Skyrim release date, and it was November 11th, 2011. And sure enough, he remembers it.
I believe it. Like I used to be a huge platformer fan, and I remember that when I was married during my honeymoon, that Mario Sunshine came out, and I was like, crap, because I'd have to go 2 weeks without playing Mario Sunshine, which in retrospect I hated Mario Sunshine, so it wasn't that big a deal. So I always say that if that game was any other game and it didn't have the word Mario on it, because when it came out, I got like 7s and 8s, and I was like, if this did not have the word Mario on it, it would have been like a 5. So anyhow, but now I got my Steam portable, I got my laptop, I got a Switch, video games wherever you want them to be. No big deal. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
See you whenever.